We're good to go. Going live now.
Ready? Okay. Welcome everyone to the Board of Education meeting for Delaware Academy. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right? We're going to start right off the bat with a presentation from Harry Dewey. Thank you. Sorry.
Over here.
The
Thank
BOCES
you.
budget and programming presentation by Mr. Harry Dewey. Welcome.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
On this really nice night, it's very good to see you folks. Tonight I'm here to present the BOCES budget, the annual budget. You have a budget presentation booklet this year that's new. We are going to provide everybody, all school boards, with a budget presentation booklet, and hopefully I will be able to get to all of the board meetings, but that sometimes does not happen. So we will put some of them in the mail or give them to the superintendents. Thank you, sir. As many of you have heard over time of this year, as we look at the budgets early on, we start our budget process in November. And I actually sequestered this year our administrative team 3 days for a budget retreat, which we've never done before, because of the fact that we thought this year's budget was going to be significantly challenging, okay? As of recent news, if you've watched the papers and listened to the news, we're getting about $12.6 billion from the federal government. The governor, at the time when he put his budget out early on, was thinking that we would need $15 billion in order for us to be able to be whole in New York State. And the reality of it is the federal stimulus plus the increase in the projected revenues from taxes is about $1.6 billion as well. If you take those two, add them together, we're almost at 15. And so significant change in the budget complexion, I think, across the state, depending on, okay, the one house budgets that have come out and then what the legislators and the governor come up with for a final budget. And we're right in the throes of that, right? So we've got to have an on-time budget, hopefully by April 1st. That being said, our budget is the budget. And so the budget that we're presenting to you is about $1 million, a little bit over $1 million less than it was last year. Okay, and so the pie chart you see, the different divisions. The other interesting thing is this. I wanted to put together some information about the administrative changes that we've made and where we were when I started at DCMO. So back in 16-17, the administrative budget with myself and the assistant superintendents and the directors. So those three categories was about 872,000. We're about 12,000 this year, less than that was, okay? So we made some significant savings there over time, and I think as we move forwards, we've got a better and more efficient structure as well. And then the administrative supervisors, these are the principals, if you will, at the Shenango campus and the Harold campus. When I came, there was 7 positions in that. Not all principals, some coordinators and assistant principals. But as we move forwards, we've made 5 principals, and we've been able to save, there's a difference there between 16-17 and 2021 of about 138,000. So we've been able to be pretty fiduciary, I would say, and still get the same amount of work done. When we started the process, talked to the CSAs, the other superintendents in the region, 16. And as we talked, and I talked to some of the business officials, we were really concerned about where we were at as a state, and we're really concerned about how we were being able to provide services in that kind of a more desperate environment than what we're looking at. And so what I said was, and you can see it in the pie charts and you can see it here, the budgets that you vote on are the capital budget and the administrative budget. And I said to my team, we need to roll that over flat. So no increase this year. And so as we looked at it, the admin budget is up, okay, about 9% overall, but the capital budget is down, okay, so they offset each other. I want to make sure everybody understands that. We came out with the fact that both numbers are even, and so there is no increase basically in the admin and the capital budgets, the ones in which our voters vote on for school boards. So I'll stop there. I just gave out a lot of information that had a lot of work to it and some significant changes. Anybody have any questions at this point? If not, I'll continue.
I guess I just have one question. The
Lucy?
difference in administration budget from 220 to 222, what has caused it to increase?
Okay, I'll get to that.
Okay.
Good question. If you will hold.
I will hold.
Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. So as you go down through the administrative budget, we gave you a slide, and I'm not going through all this information, but I gave you a slide that has all the budget codes and what the budget was adopted in 2021 and what we're looking at and proposed of 21-22. So Lucy, the devils are in that slide, if you will, the details in that slide. But I have a slide that highlights some of that as well. So the revenue reports, obviously we have to bring in money to pay for that budget. And so it's based on our WADA. And so Delhi is the third one down, and you are at 6.4% of last year's budget or this year that we're in. And that was 150, and then you guys actually went up a little bit. Looks like your Arwada changed a little bit, and you have a little bit more of the pie on this one. So you're at 171. So, and that fluctuates, if everybody remembers, from year to year. It's dependent. So the capital budget, and here is a difference. So what we did in the capital budget to reduce the capital budget, we had 5 satellite programs for special ed. One was in, I'm not gonna be able to name them all, but one was in Sydney, one was in GMU, UV. There was one at the Eaton Center, and then there was one at BG. So I think I got all 5 of them. Anyways, we pulled those back. The rent for those was paid for by law out of the admin budget, okay? This does a couple of things. Number one, it provides us with better programming for those students, okay? Being a satellite from the BOCES and being in supervision of those kids, it is somewhat sometimes challenging to get there when there's needs for students. The other piece is, and I believe Delhi was in this situation, it takes kids from being on a bus for a specific period of time and adding the time from Masonville to Sydney for some of your students in the past, I know. And so that will not be occurring anymore. So there's some benefits, pros and cons, but in the environment that we thought we were in, and the space availability with the reduction in Career Academy, it was very doable for us to get to this, and so it was a great place to save. And then, let's see what else, there was one more thing here. The EPC project, okay, is also, you'll see this as we go through in time, energy performance project. And what that is a project in which we had a company come in and they estimated if we do these changes in savings in energy, most of it's lighting, changing the lights to LED lighting, that project would pay for itself over time, but we have to front the money to pay for it. So this is part of that projection. All right, and again, in the capital budget, you guys, as all school districts are, have an Arwada, or I guess on this one it's a quantity. And so it goes across and you pay a percentage of it. Okay, so description of the major budget codes. This is another commonly asked question, and so I want to get this one right out there as well. My salary, and you folks understand this because I think I explained this when we did the search, but it's always worth explaining. Of my salary, 148,000 of it comes from the districts, and then 43,499 comes from the state, because I'm employed by both. Okay, so I'm a state employee, but also an employee of the districts, if you will. Okay, and then the other salaries that come out of, the other salaries that are in the budget are here, okay? And for the most part, by law, we have to have the salaries of anybody that's working in the business office as it's set up. We are looking at some other savings, but I'll probably report on those next year. At least I hope to. All right, and let's see, this is, oops, I went backwards, sorry. And then the 400 codes and 700 codes, with your grace, I'm not going to go through and bore you with all the codes. You, I'm sure, can read them, and they haven't changed from last year. All right, Lucy, here's your slide. Okay, so these are some of the significant changes. The biggest challenge that we have right now, and this is across the BOCES, is healthcare. Okay, our healthcare went up about 20% this year. I'll talk to you a little bit about that because I think that's something that is really important for us to be working on as we move forwards. We were in New York 44. When I came, we put our letter in, we got out. We brought ourselves out, they wouldn't give us our experience rating, but we made a significant move to Excellus with Brown & Brown. We hired a broker, we went to Brown & Brown. Brown & Brown, as we moved through with Excellus, promised us, Excellus did, and then the law changed, promised us that we would have 9%, and then an 11% increase in the next 3 years as we move forwards, so that we would not have to have a big jump, okay? Because they didn't know what our experience rating was, because we couldn't get it from New York 44. So long story short, as we move forwards, there has been legislative change stating that insurance companies cannot guarantee the increase of the next year to anybody. And so thus we went back on the free market, and our experience rating unfortunately was outrunning and outpacing our premiums. And we all know that insurance companies are not going to lose money. And so in order for us to stay insured, we've got to move through this process. We are looking at creating a fully insured consortium with 5 school districts. And so we would move from about 400 souls, if you will, to about 1,300 souls. And if we could move to that 1,300 souls, then we would have more leveraging, okay? And we could definitely, probably drive our rate down. And that's what we're looking at doing. We just don't have enough time to do it between now and the first of next school year. Okay, it just isn't going to be conceivably possible. But we do have a framework, and we are working with 5 other districts.
You know what insurance company that would be? You know?
There's 2 insurance companies that are really in the region that folks would use, and it's MVP and Excellus. Okay, and so what we try to do is leverage the 2 against each other. I mean, that's really the reality of our insurance. And it's unfortunate, but the carriers are the only carriers that are big enough to have what do they call it, not in district, but in program healthcare around the United States.
Perry, 2 questions. Have you, I assume the buy-in for KCP is just to look at that? Have you had conversations with KCP?
We've had conversations with KCP. They will not accept us in our experience rate. So that'll tell you a little bit about why it's 20%. And we are also, the second shoe of what I was gonna say is, we are trying to aggressively start a wellness program, okay? So that our staff is healthier. Healthier staff is gonna create less, insurance needs, so.
And the other question is, do you, at that 1,400 level, are you talking about looking at a self-insured model?
Fully self-insured, yes.
Okay, because that'd be about the threshold, I think, for the numbers.
Mhm. And it would be easier for us to leverage. I mean, it just would be, but I don't know if we'll get there, but we're not gonna not try.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to,
to.
yeah. So that's really our big hit right there. Lucy, did I answer your question?
You did. I do have one question, and I'm sure the answer is yes, you've tried. I know the local schools around here have offered retirees a program for 65 and older. Is that being offered in BOCES for your retirees?
Yeah, so when I first came to BOCES, we did a retirement incentive. And the state is coming out with a retirement, the state is coming out with a retirement incentive if, at least it's in the one-house budget, let's put it that way. So if it comes out, we will definitely probably get into that retirement incentive as well. We may incentivize above it. I've not looked to see where the bubble is in our population of employees. But yes, definitely looking at that always. Very important. And then these are just usual questions. Again, questions that are out there that we print each year, answers to them as well. I don't think there's really been a lot of change in these. The numbers change a little bit, like number 4, the increase and decrease. We haven't really talked about the annual liability reserve, but that continues to grow, just like everybody else's does. And that's always challenging. And I think you remember from me talking to you from years past, this budget grows, the administrative budget grows way past 2% each year. And so we just continue to manage it as best we can. And you'll notice this year it grew like the 9%, but we were able to scoot down into the capital budget to make those changes so that we're going across flat with both of them. Until something changes legislatively with BOCES and that, we're going to continue to be challenged by these budgets to keep them under 2% as a growth factor. But I think we're okay for the next foreseeable future. And depending on where we're at, this could be a good year for us to just, go flat, and then, hopefully if in fact they provide us with the ability to carry some of this money over into the next years, we'll be able to, rebound and get back on track for the 2%. So, other questions quick on this? Okay, thank you. And you got it? So, Kelly asked me to do a little presentation on what kids can get as far as certifications from CTE, okay? And she was gracious enough to print this for me, so thank you very much. And so this is pretty much straightforward. And so I know, again, I'm not going to go slide by slide, but definitely want to answer any questions. I'm going to give you some time. Go ahead and look at this, and then I'll talk at you a little bit through the whole process, okay? One of the obvious important pieces of CTE is that kids come out and they are employable, okay? And that means that they have to have certification, okay? And it has to be industry standard certification. Now, that being said, not all programs have the same certification because obviously the content is different from one program to the next, okay? But you'll notice there's themes here. So a lot of safety is embedded in these. So a lot of OSHA training, a lot of OSHA safety, a lot of OSHA certification. So when I walk on the job, The employer doesn't have to train me in safety and get me to a point where I'm employable. Okay, that's huge, okay? And then each child has an employability profile that they take with them from the BOCES programs. Okay, now that's a piece that's not here, but I want to explain that just a little bit if you give me some grace. The employability profile is something that a child can put with a resume. And it lists basically everything that that child has been skilled or tested on, whether it has been a national test like the NOCTI, which is the National Occupation Certification and Testing Institute. So NOCTI does multiple careers. Okay, you'll see NOCTI, it's another theme here. Many of the programs are certified under NOCTI, which is industry standard nationally, and or like for cosmetology, there's a cosmetology certification in New York State. Okay, so it's a state certification that they have to have in order to practice. So and you can see that here, state licensure, but they also have the NOCTI as well. So that employability profile is huge because as an employer, it's really a one-pager, and you can see this kid should be able to do this, and this. It's been certified, here it is. And so that, I think, probably, along with these, because they're all listed, is probably very strong as a child coming out of one of our programs, definitely a tool to use for employment, okay?
What percentage of your students who go to any of these programs achieve those licensings?
Okay, what percentage achieve the licensing? I don't know right off the top of my head, so I'm gonna take that back, and I'm gonna leave you with an estimate, all right?
Yes.
I'll bring you the actual answer. I'm gonna say to you that probably at least 80 to 90% of the kids, there's going to be some of them, like the OSHA standard, it'll be 100%, because those ones, you won't be able to work in the environment in the lab unless you would pass that, okay? The NOCTI is a different animal, okay? And the certification that you come out with, okay, is a different animal. So there will be kids that get it because they've achieved it, and there will be kids that do not get it, okay? And I'll give you that percentage, because that's really, I think, the percentage you're looking for.
And
So
the-
what kids come out industry certified?
And the students who do not get it, do they have then an opportunity to retake it?
Yes, well,
Yes.
let me check on that, but I believe so, yes. Okay, so retaking it and the number of the percentages certified, okay?
Perry, correct me if I'm wrong too, but the students who do not achieve it, it could also be because their ability level is such that they may be in concurrent programs, CTE program, and then programs for students with higher levels of special need a different part of the day. And they may leave with a CDOS credential, which also includes the employability profile, but may not have been able to pass the NOCTI, for example.
Right.
So this is not an all or nothing for the other 10 to 20% of students. Is that accurate?
So, yes, that's very accurate. So let me explain, add on to what you just said. So when you take the NOCTI, there's two parts to the NOCTI, and it usually lasts for like 3 days, all right? The first part is a written test, okay? But then the second part of it is the physical lab work, where you have people over your shoulder watching you perform a skill. And they go from station to station to station, and they have to perform skills. So, for example, they may have to build, they may have to do a butt weld, a T-weld, a lat weld, and a V-weld through those days. And then they'll take it and they'll pressure test it to break it. Okay, so it has to have certain standards and meet certain standards. The other programs do the same thing, okay? Most of the kids pass that section. Okay, where kids get hung up is on the written part, okay? But you gotta have both. Okay, so there's no in between. And so, yes, that is a definitely probably the number one contributing factor to why a student doesn't get the certification.
Yeah, I just have a question about, there's a couple of these that says must be 18, like forklift.
Yep.
So can the kids enter that program if they're not 18, as long as they're 18 by the time they're done? Is that what it is?
Yes,
Okay,
When they take the exam or whatever, like.
yeah, they can practice to get to there,
okay.
and then they can take the state once they're 18.
So they could be, so say, like my son won't be 18 until he's graduated, and it's August now, school's
Yep.
over, he won't be 18 until August.
Yep.
He could take a program like that while he's 17, graduate, and then take the test when he's 18 in August? Okay, thank you.
The kids can come back. I was a November baby.
Okay.
Understand exactly what you're talking about. Other questions? Okay, we also provided, and you'll notice that there's a smattering of these throughout, but our business program has multiple CTE or TC3 credit components to it. So students can graduate with a significant amount of credits towards their 2-year degree. I think don't quote me on this, but I think we're like a semester shy. If a child were to take the business program and take all the TC3 courses in the 2 years that they're there, and I think some business programs at the homeschools and some homeschools provide them with the opportunity as well. Kids can graduate with almost a 2-year degree. So it's kind of cool. And then other college credits, embedded, the New Visions programs, it's very important. And then, obviously with all of the local colleges, so.
Do you have
Questions?
any job shadowing or alliance with different corporations in the area?
So we have about 250 businesses and industries that are listed on our list of partners or people we collaborate with across the 3 counties. And our students should be graduating in order to fulfill their employability profile. They have to have a job shadowing experience or an apprentice experience. So it's embedded in the programming. It's challenging to get it done though. So, all right.
I wonder, how often is there changes to the list of certifications and what changes do you see down the line?
Down the line. I'm not 100% on being able to answer the changes down the line, okay, but the list stays pretty constant, okay? The change occurs within the test itself. So like, for example, the OSHA test will definitely be something that as the industry standards change, the test will then reflect that. Okay, so, and the same thing with NACI. They redo the NACI tests, I think they redo them on a 3-year schedule. It's either a 3 or 5-year schedule, and so they're updated to industry standards. And that's done on a national level. So that piece of it is always trying to keep up with what's going on in business and industry. And that's extremely important. The hard thing that we have is keeping, and this is part of the reason why we ask for the boards to do an equipment reserve for CTE. Hard part for us is it's expensive to run those programs, and so to keep up with the technology as it's coming out, it's not easy. And that technology is expensive, so you can't test a kid on technology that they've not used. It's not fair. And so we try to stay abreast of that as well. So that's really important. It's a good question.
Perry, when will you have an idea, or do you already have an idea of your census, your program numbers for next year?
Program numbers, we have the initial, and then I think you guys turned in final requests last Friday, I think, wasn't there? It was 2 Fridays ago.
A couple Fridays ago, yeah.
Couple of Fridays, alright. And so I have not checked those numbers yet, but I am guessing we do two kinds of requesting. The preliminary request and then the final request. And from the preliminary, we're not down in CTE, as a matter of fact, I think we're up.
And overall, the special ed in there too, and
Our numbers are not changing a whole lot.
Okay.
We're not going down, we're not going up. I believe that we provide you in the fall, after Vets Day, a list of our kids in census across the campus. Check. Okay, and so those numbers are out, and they'll come out again in the fall. But I don't think we're down, I mean, there was no, when we did our budget, we were using numbers that were consistent with the year before. So I don't think as far as, can't give you, because I haven't looked at the final request, but I'm pretty sure we're probably pretty close. We take in about 44% of the juniors and seniors in the region. So, yeah.
Robin, how many students at Delaware Academy have participated in these programs?
This year, I believe we have about 20 in both, junior and senior. And our numbers look about the same for interest for students that are currently signing up for that.
Yeah.
And I just want to give you a little plug. Our kids in our junior class love the programs and they're doing wonderfully. I'm hoping they're going to be your highest honor society type students. It's been great that we've been able to send them together. And
Thank you.
it's made a huge, huge difference. This group especially has just been amazing for them, so.
Yeah, it has been a long road with COVID to get to this point. I mean, our teachers have been on 5 days a week, every day. And they are very much in tune with the kids. And I can't say thank you enough for what you just said, because that's what wears on me. I mean, it just does. They've done a huge job. I'm just so proud of them. Just so proud.
Any other questions?
Other questions?
So as you know, at our next board meeting on April 27th,
Tuesday.
it's a Tuesday to align with the annual vote for the BOCES budget. So if there are any questions between now and then come up, I can certainly forward them to Mr. Dewey. And, but you will see that as an item on our agenda on the 27th.
Can I just follow up, Lucy, if you would please write those questions down and give them to Kelly so that I don't forget to answer your questions.
I had the first one, what was the
Please.
second one?
The second one was.
Percentage to achieve the certifications?
Yep.
That was,
How many get certified and that was it. I think there was.
Is that the only one you have now?
Yep.
Okay, then I can remember that.
yeah.
Well, it said, what percentage, and you said you thought 80 to 90, but you find out percentage that got licensed.
And I think the second question had to do with those who did not achieve it, then what?
Yes.
And then we had that discussion.
Okay, so I'll coordinate with Kelly and get you some answers, okay?
Thank you.
All right.
thank you for the transparency. I know this is year 4 or 5 of you doing this, but this really helps a lot understand what's driving the numbers and what we're a part of, so I appreciate the information.
I appreciate it that you appreciate it, because transparency, I always tell my staff, transparency is your friend. And if you're transparent, you'll never have to worry about justifying anything. And so this is where we're at. And so I think it's really great for the region, because we're trying to do as best we can for the districts to provide the best services. Doesn't always work, but for the most part, I think we're successful, so. And it doesn't, pardon me?
I do appreciate as well, you've done what you said you were going to do.
Yes.
Yes.
That's back when you came on, you had a path, you had a goal, you know what you wanted to, and you're sticking to that and you're getting there.
Thanks.
And it's appreciated.
Yeah, it gives me great confidence in you.
I'm smiling.
And Mr. Dewey's always asking for feedback and truly listens to the field, so.
Because we can always do better. We can always do better. Okay, I will leave you and thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody stay safe.
Thank you very much. You too.
Harry, you're welcome to stay for the whole meeting if you want, as always.
Thank you. But I think I'm gonna like.
Well,
I have a long drive and I have a dog at home that really needs.
Oh, yeah, pet the dog,
Take care.
All right, see you, Barry.
All right, now Mrs. Zimmerman will be giving our data report. Show.
Thank you again.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
I think you said it down a little bit.
Now, that's what I'm looking for. Okay. I like the hands. Thank you very much. All right, so it is that time of the year when we take a pause and take a look at how we have survived. We're now beyond the first half of the year. So tonight we'll be looking a little bit at the progress during the first half of our school year. We're going to talk about how we are going to use data moving forward in our district, not just as a gauge of how well we're doing, but how to dig a little deeper and make that meaningful. And then I'm going to spend a little time just setting the course for everyone to understand where we've not only been from the fall, but where we're headed until next fall. So I'm going to pause for a quick minute. I spent 2 days giving a similar presentation to both of our faculties at the middle and high school and also the elementary school. And I started by asking everybody, have you ever tried surfing? All right, a few people, right? So our family had an opportunity to try surfing a few summers ago. And when you first hear that you're going to go on a surfing excursion, you're super excited. You're ready for a new challenge. You take time and you listen to what all the advice from the instructor, and you pump each other up and you're ready to go. And so the day comes when it's time to go and you grab that surfboard, and I remember thinking, those are a lot bigger than I thought they were. And a lot heavier too, and how do my kids fare and do this? And so you jump in the water, try it anyway, you're laying your belly on that surfboard, paddling as hard as you can, and you're looking around to see who am I doing better than, who am I maybe not doing as well as, and you start to judge yourself immediately. And you get out there and you finally catch that first wave, and the balance is just right, and you get up and you're like, oh, I've got this. And you think you're a pro already, right? I'm above average. And all right, so you've conquered that first wave, you get ready and you're thinking, all right, I'm gonna get another one, here I go. But every wave is different, and you're not as successful, and you're knocked down, you're maybe thrown underwater, and you're wondering, okay, maybe I'm not ready for this, or as good as perhaps I thought I was. And so, but at that point, you're already soaking wet, you're already in it now, maybe over your head, and you have no choice but to keep going. And so you do. And the waves keep coming, and they are relentless, and they're unpredictable. And you try your best to figure out what's going to come at you next, and you just don't know, will the next one hurt me, or will I be able to roll with it? And so this kind of continues, until finally you are just exhausted. And so you lay your belly back on the surfboard, you ride that last wave into shore, and you get there, and you might laugh, you might cry, but what do? You talk with each other, and you share your stories. You share your stories of success, you figure out how can I do it better next time, and you might, decide how you can support one each other next time. This year has been a lot like surfing for us so far. I will tell you that we've had a plan coming out of the gate. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But we rolled with it, and we made changes and adjustments as we needed to. And we supported each other through that process as we compared our stories. So I sat here with you at 10 weeks and reviewed some of the updates at that point. And here we are beyond 20 weeks, and I'm going to review again, but some of these have changed. What hasn't changed is that every day we're still welcoming about 600 students through these doors in person every single day. Over 100 students remotely. These are our current models, which, by the way, out of the gate, we maximized. We continue with our daily health screenings, and every time that there has been a report of a positive in either of our schools, you have found out about it. We have remained committed to being transparent and reporting every positive case when I get those calls from the Department of Health. With each and every case, it took longer at first. I remember we sat here for 2 hours one day figuring out how can we stay open to the maximum number of students possible in order to do that without needing to shut down a whole building or 2 buildings. And we were successful at that, and we learned from that, and we became really skilled with every case at trying to figure out how do we minimize the impact of this while still maintaining health and safety for all of our students. And since that time, we have brought back over 40 remote-only students into our doors for families who have needed that, or for students that we have identified have needed that. We continue to meet on a weekly basis to evaluate our progress. Every time updates have come from the State Ed Department or the New York State Department of Health, we've adjusted our protocols, and we have turnkeyed those almost as quick as they come in, even when we don't have all the answers. We have facilitated staff getting vaccinated. We had the question asked of us today, of all of our staff, faculty and staff who have wanted to be vaccinated, have they had the opportunity at this point? And we can confidently say yes, they have. We have not been able to require that, but people who have wanted it have had an opportunity to get that. We may still have some who are in the queue, but that has been accessible to everybody. And we have provided regular community updates, whether it's through my monthly updates to the community, in our return to in-person learning and survey, which I'll talk about in a little bit. We've done a great job continuing to be flexible with our meal distribution, making sure that none of our children go hungry. We've engaged with our student leadership, who have offered some really great ideas and solutions. You're going to see one of them on the referendum on the ballot when you come to vote for school budget this year. Our students have asked to have a non-voting student representative on this Board of Education. We've continued to expand offerings where it's safe to do so. We've continued to focus on social, emotional, mental health needs. And our students have guided us and led Spirit Weeks and maintained our school spirit throughout the pandemic. We conducted our building-wide fall and winter benchmarks at the elementary school, which we'll see the data in just a minute. We have continued to develop our relationship with DASH. We fine-tuned testing protocols and a drive-through testing site for our DASH members who need that. We have initiated our construction phase of our capital project. We've continued to hold band, chorus, orchestra. We're moving ahead with our school musical. We developed and implemented our athletic preparedness plan. We made it through the winter season without any COVID infection, which has been great, and just started our fall too. So we continue almost on a daily basis to keep moving forward despite those relentless waves. I'm going to pause for a little bit and talk a little bit about our demographic data. This shows a 5-year representation. I keep feeling I'm in your way here, Mr. Dave. I'm trying to move around a little bit. Okay. 5-year representation of our overall enrollment. We often wonder to what degree has this pandemic affected our enrollment? You'll notice it has remained pretty steady at the middle and high school overall. There was a more significant decrease at the elementary school. This has been to a rise in that age group, opting to have increased number in our homeschool students in this current year. Really the only significant difference. When we look at attendance overall, attendance has been that really moving target for us this year because the state has redefined how we have to keep attendance and report attendance at least twice now. But in doing so, when we look at our overall attendance compared to enrollment, this top red bar shows our overall enrollment in any given year, the gray bar shows our attendance, of course with a percentage of attendance. Elementary has remained steady because we do count attendance in both our remote and our in-person platforms. When we look at the middle and high school, this is where we see the effects of COVID wearing on us a little bit more with our older students who, they'll get up in the morning, I'm just not feeling it, I want to be remote, and then may fail to tune into remote. Any host of reasons that you'll see. Still above 90%,
but a small decrease compared to where we've been historically. Our overall free and reduced lunch in terms of our economically disadvantaged population has remained steady. And then we move to our performance data. So you remember at 10 weeks, I presented performance data in the elementary school in two different ways. The first way we're looking at achievement on report cards. And this is shown by total enrollment, but also the students who are achieving 1, 2, 3s, or 4s. 1 represents that they are not progressing toward a particular standard, and then it goes up from there. Where a 4 is that they have achieved or mastered that particular standard. At elementary school, it is standards-based, meaning that we are measuring how we're progressing toward the standards that have been taught to that point so far. So in the first quarter, it's not wholly uncommon to see a bunch of 1s, just by the simple fact that perhaps we haven't gotten to teaching that standard yet in the scope and sequence of our curriculum. So that kind of gives you a sense of where we are. If you move down to number 2, you'll quickly notice that the percentage of our students who are making progress towards standards is beyond the percentage that we showed in quarter 1. This is great progress. We have a ton to celebrate at our elementary level. Despite COVID, our students are killing it down there right now. This is just from a standards-based perspective. But then if you look at comparison of how our students perform between the fall and the winter on the iReady benchmark data, we quickly see that when we look in ELA, the number of students who have met half year more of growth at each grade level, and then the same down in math. Look at the number of students who have already at this point made a half year's worth of annual growth. Over half. That's really phenomenal data. And when you compare this to the benchmarks from last school year, when we didn't have COVID, students are still outperforming where they were a year ago. So this is truly significant. Something is working at the elementary school. Some people are attributing that to smaller class sizes, greater one-on-one attention. However, I will say that it's due to our teachers who have remained dedicated and focused on narrowing the scope and really going deeply in curriculum and paying attention to the relationship and the degree to which our students are engaged in content at the elementary. Talk about creative solutions. They've done an amazing job for our students there. Jump ahead to our middle and high school performance data. This is based on report cards. This is also disaggregated a bit by instructional models. If we look at quarter 1, our overall passing rate for all of our students, 6 through 12, rested at about 93%. Second quarter, we are experiencing a little bit of a decline. We're down to 89% passing. Close. So you see a slight increase in our number of students who are failing right now. And we're also seeing an indication of even our students who are in attendance every single day are starting to check out a little bit. We're seeing increased mental health, reports of mental health needs in our high school students. And this is data that we need to pay attention to. Overall, I would take risk to say that 89%, I'm guessing, is probably still higher than most of our partners in our region. However, the fact that we're starting to see this trend is not okay, and it requires some attention. So, I never want to place blame, but how can we do better? And if we can do better by just starting to change the lens with which we view student performance and student achievement, I think that that's great. So when we've talked to teachers this year, we talked about, are you providing opportunities to learn in your classroom, or are you truly ensuring that learning is taking place? Because when you are simply bringing kids to school every day and giving them an opportunity to learn, you may find yourself saying things like, I can't help there's a pandemic. It just means more kids are going to fail this year. I'm teaching it, they're just not learning it. Now, that is not the attitude of our teachers at Delaware Academy. We have amazing teachers here. And teachers truly are more reflective of ensuring student learning. This has been a challenge. So even when you are being asked at the high school to teach in several different models, simultaneously in one classroom, and then you're still trying to design and provide feedback, using assessment to inform instruction, making sure that our students are learning, we're asking more of our high school teachers than we ever have in a prior year. When we are ensuring learning, we're designing classroom instruction to provide opportunities for all of our learners. And that is what we will continue to do. So we're focused on how we move from providing kids opportunities to learn to ensuring that they're truly learning. Teaching without students learning is really just presenting. We're not presenters here, we are teachers here. So I wanted to just provide a little bit of a background for the board on the kind of language that we're using this year to get us through the pandemic and that will continue to be used as we move forward. I now want to transition into just some federal and state updates. This piece is specific to New York State assessments. Later in the presentation, we're going to move toward the federal and state updates as it pertains to returning to in-person learning. Specifically in assessments, you may have heard back in February, the United States Department of Education said that they will not be granting any blanket waivers. New York State had applied for a waiver from all state assessments. And the U.S. Department of Education said we're not going to do that, but you can reapply for a waiver that has different requirements within it. And so they did, and sent out another memo just this past Friday, specific to Regents exams. So worst case scenario, August Regents exams are going to be canceled, and the ESSA required, or the federally required Regents exams, which are Algebra 1, Living Environment, Earth Science, and English 11, will continue to be, will be the only ones that are required this year. However, just like last year, they will not be counted toward accountability. The local districts will be able to determine if those are calculated for graduation and used in those same manners. So we'll see the same level of flexibility as last year. Parents will also have the opportunity to say, I don't want my child exempt from an exam, and I do want them to sit for one of those 4 Regents exams. That's okay as well. There's not been an update similar to that on the 3 through 8 ELA math and science assessments, but what we do know is the flexibility built into those will be 1 day multiple choice. They will be in-person computer-based. We will not be requiring our remote-only learners to come in and take that assessment. If our remote-only learners want to, they will need to come to campus, because the state is saying they cannot be taken at home, but the district will not require that of them. The ones that are in person will be computer-based assessments like we've done in the past, but not used to measure the accountability for the district, and there will be no science performance assessment.
Like, did they shorten the federal required regions, or they're still the same length as they've always been?
They have removed some of the performance pieces, like in the science, for example, the lab component. But for the typical written ones, they are not shortening them, but they may be changing the construct, the balance of the extended response versus the multiple choice. Yeah. So then you might ask yourself, well then what's the point? What is the role of assessments? And in this year, performance on these state assessments, we could take the risk of them telling us that despite all of our best efforts and all of that data that I just showed you that we're demonstrating progress on, students might still score lower in the past. And I'm here to tell you that that's not what is critical to me in this year. How are we measuring true learning and growth, not mastery on a state assessment that a small percentage of our students are going to take? You also hear this term learning loss. Personally, that term drives me a little bit crazy. I prefer to refer to it as gaps in our students' achievement. When we say learning loss, it applies that our teachers and our students have lost something that is their fault, that is something intrinsic to the individual that has resulted in their inability to learn this year. The focus is on the individual and not the system. So the approach that we are taking is to remove that pointing fingers and say, we need to look at the system as a whole, and how will the system remedy and address this overall achievement gap? Well, there's no doubt that there could be things in this year because of COVID that our students were not exposed to within the curriculum. Access to instruction has not been equitable. We all know that. How can we purport to say that it's equitable with so many different learning platforms, not only here but across the state? And other factors that are a little harder to quantify, the changing mental health needs of our students, the social emotional components that without a doubt are affecting their ability to even come to school and pay attention, those have all had an impact. So we always want to move toward equity, right, over equality. Meaning that there's not a one-size-fits-all to this approach. So we talk about reimagining how we're assessing, how we're grading, how we are looking at progress and achievement, and we ask ourselves, what is the purpose? Do we need to know at this point if a student has mastered content? Or are they truly demonstrating learning? And what opportunities are we presenting to our students to show us that? And in what ways can we be creative and really re-level this playing field for equitable experiences for all of our students to demonstrate their knowledge? Are we providing alternatives to just sitting and taking summative assessments, where students understand the learning objective, they understand the standard that we're trying to teach to, but now you're saying, Sean, what's the best way for you as a learner to show me that you understand the objective? You might be a hands-on learner. You might say, I want to take a test. And that's okay, because keep in perspective, what is it that we're trying to measure? So what does that mean for us? So as we move forward, we have talked with our faculty and staff about this focus is not on the outcome of these state assessments this year. That we must use multiple sources of data, a few of which I showed you a minute ago, to inform our instruction. We need to take time to kind of take stock in what within the curriculum were we able to get through this year, and what pieces were we not. And then what falls through that filter, and look at, of those components, did we really miss the mark on a priority standard, on a learning standard that's super important? And then from there, if not, whatever's left, does that align with what a student will be expected to know next year? And you take all of those components, and that's how you build next year's curriculum as a teacher. And you begin to map that out. And where are some of those standards repeated? And what does that look like when I scaffold and when I come back and spiral instruction? I'm not going to stand here and say our kids are going to be completely caught up in 1 year. This approach is going to take a little bit of time. But I would caution you against measuring that against prior expectations and norms that existed prior to COVID. It's not the same playing field. We need to ground in our core beliefs that every student can learn, and taking all of this information, building those informed master schedules, and how student performance in this year can inform those courses that we continue to offer. So a little bit of the lens of how we'll be approaching some of this work through spring and summer. I'm going to pause right there. Are there questions thus far on achievement or learning before we start jumping into what you're probably all waiting to really talk about? Okay. More federal updates. Again, on Fridays seem to be the day around here for some reason. Fridays when the CDC released its updated recommendations. I'm going to come out of the gate and say that until the New York State Department of Health adopts and adjusts those as however they see fit, we have to follow current New York State Department of Health regulations. So just because CDC has put it out there does not mean that we can act on that yet. Historically speaking, Department of Health has responded on a timetable about 2 weeks after CDC things have rolled out. throughout the course of this pandemic. Summary of some of the key changes, however, that are in the CDC language that may resonate into the New York State Department of Health guidance. Regardless of where we go toward our effort to move toward full in-person learning, we must engage our community and a community of stakeholders. We took an initial first step by putting out the community survey. However, please do not be mistaken. The results of that survey, which I will do a light touch on, do not mean that that dictates the direction that the district will go in. There are close to 200 written responses on that survey, narratives. And I've read every single one, as have some of our board members and our administrators. So have we had preliminary conversations about all of this? Absolutely, we would be remiss if we have not. And I also tried to put in a letter to our community the factors that we would need to consider if we were to move forward. I know there was some misunderstanding here within the district that meant that was the plan and that's what we were going to do, but not at all. My intent was merely to share some of the considerations that we're going to need to make in order to move forward. The data on the results of the survey will certainly inform some of that, but until we have the opportunity to bring together our full reopening committee, we are not going to push forward. A few other pieces just to highlight. Universal and required use of masks, regardless of where we land, that will continue to be a thing. I know that some of the comments were, I'm not going to come to school, I won't send my child to school if we still have to wear masks. I'm sorry, we will still have to wear masks. Also, the ability to even consider now moving to greater in-person learning, and what I mean by that is from 6 feet social distancing to 3 feet, because that's really the barrier here, is now based on a new set of red, yellow, orange, blue zones. So they're calling them low, moderate, substantial, and high community transmission rates. And there's a map on the CDC website that's always being updated that shows where Delaware County rests. And depending on where you fall in this transmission rate, that determines the extent to which you can change or shift from your models. Regardless of transmission rates, they're recommending elementary school students can be 3 feet apart. At middle and high school, because the research shows that there's greater likelihood of transmission the older that you get, they're a little more conservative. They say you can be 3 feet apart unless you're in a high transmission zone, that you have to stay 6 feet apart if there's no cohorting. You can move to 3 feet if you're still in cohorts. Again, this does not mean this is where we're going. These are other factors to consider. We still have to maintain the 6 feet of distancing during meals, so there are implications for food service, for both breakfast and for lunch. Still maintain the 1 student per seat on our buses, so you can quickly see that there are transportation implications here. And we still have to offer remote instruction for students who either have or live with family members who have those high-risk health conditions. So a few of the key factors in the CDC guidance. So where's the district then? We are always moving forward. We're in the early planning phases right now. Our next step is to pull together the reopening committee. And we're looking to schedule dates possibly the end of this week, but certainly into next week. Don't forget, we're still anticipating Department of Health guidance to come through. So all we can do is guess and plan until that comes through when we can land on where we go. Regardless, we will be taking a phased, informed, deliberate approach. Even if Department of Health said tonight, you can do it and move forward, we will not be reopening our doors to everybody tomorrow. We'll be engaging that stakeholder committee to look at a timeline for slowly moving toward the model where we determine is best for all of our students. Just a brief look, just again in the spirit of transparency, to show you what the initial data is showing us. As of yesterday, we had 481 respondents. I did not check it today. I would guess we have more. The survey continues to be open. About 70% of those respondents have been our parents and guardians. Second come our students, and about 12% of the overall respondents represent our faculty and staff. That ratio is not wholly disproportionate from our true population here. Out of the entire response set, about 75% want a full return. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is when this survey went out, we didn't know what we know now. Remember, those waves keep coming. So even not knowing what the parameters would be or what it would look like, we had people saying, okay, I'm ready for a full return right now. Now, when you pull this apart a little bit more and conduct a little bit deeper analytics on this data, when you look at the overall faculty and staff, about 56% want a full return, 26% prefer to remain in current models. There are some valid reasons on every side and everywhere in between. And there's really no right or wrong here because we've never been through this before. When you pull this apart between elementary and middle and high school, these numbers in parentheses are the real numbers of respondents. 15 teachers of the elementary responded, which represented 2% of those responses who said we can have a full return. Again, very valid reasons at the elementary level for saying, please keep us in our current model. And that's the piece that the reopening committee will evaluate and discuss as we move forward. A little bit different at the middle and high school, where close to 70% of those teachers are advocating for a full return. When we look at the responses from our parents and guardians in our community, 77% of elementary level are saying, yes, we want a full return, 88% at the middle and high school. And student responses, we're not that far off from what our parents are saying. Our students and parents want to be back, but again, there are a number of factors that we will continue to be transparent about that we have to consider before we implement any of this. So just because the data suggests this, it will inform our decision-making, it will not make our decision-making. Any questions on that?
Can I ask a question? So even if we do eventually go back in person full-time, there's always that potential based on what zone we're in that we could have to go back remote again.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then one other question I have is, based on that same thing, it has to be a county-wide transmission rate, even if our little area is okay and it's someplace farther away in Delaware County, it has to be based on what the county's rate is?
That is the guidance from the CDC.
Okay.
We do not know if the New York State Department of Health will adopt that at face value or if they will apply greater detail to that or not. Those are great questions. Another factor that could also result in us going back to fully remote is keep in mind if we bring twice as many kids back in and there's one positive case, it's twice as many kids as will be identified to quarantine, which means they will be out.
And faculty.
And faculty, that's right, Beth, yes, yeah, and potentially faculty and staff. Because what doesn't change are the parameters for quarantine. And they still measure people who are within 6 feet, with or without masks.
I recently on Canada, they had 30 high school kids that had to quarantine and like 4 staff because of that just happened.
More kids are back in school, right?
We do it though with the amount of time though, someone is in direct contact, is that right?
That's still-
It's just that they were physically in the presence of someone, it has to be greater than 2 periods.
We also do by the amount of time that they are exposed. And that is the local Department of Health. So Delaware County Department of Health, with every case that comes in, we talk about who's within 6 feet, masks, no masks. If they are within 6 feet, what's the amount of time that we are within this space? And was that greater than 10 to 15
I
minutes?
think that's important, I'm not sure that everybody knows that,
Mhm.
so that's why I asked the clarifying question, that it doesn't mean because somebody was in this room, so if somebody on the other side would test positive tomorrow,
It would not
that may
automatically
not
be, right?
automatically mean that I'm quarantined, vice versa.
Correct.
So there's some interpretation that goes along, time frame, distance, PPE,
With every
all
case.
that.
Absolutely. Yep, a number of factors. Thanks for pointing that out.
Kelly, is there any correlation between the elementary school, the first set of numbers that says 80% remain in the current mode? Do we already have the kindergartners and first graders?
That's a great point. So I looked at that in the response set. And some of those absolutely are represented there. Mostly kindergarten. So out of the, let me go down. Out of the elementary parents and students, there were a small set of those who want to remain in that current model. The elementary teachers, I did not look at what grade levels those represented. But yes, so that was kind of a mix, because the same thing happened in 7th grade and 12th grade. So those, of course, are classes that are here every day. And some of those students said, I want to remain in the current model because I want to be here every day. And some of those students also said, I want a full return because I want to be here every day. So those are, I reported them as they reported in. So those are probably a small factor, but I would not say that it skews the data significantly. Great question.
Kelly, is that faculty that would be vaccinated may not need to quarantine with even a longer exposure period, right?
So
You're saying 90 days, I think.
the Department of Health right now is saying that if you are 2 weeks post your second vaccination, but prior to 90 days post your second vaccination, that if there is an infection, you would not be indicated to quarantine. That has not come to us in writing yet though, but that is what they're discussing.
From what I'm hearing, they're reevaluating that 90 days because obviously I don't think we're going to be getting shots every 90 days the rest of our lives.
And I've asked that question, and that's not the spirit behind that. They're not afraid that the vaccine will wear off in 90 days. They wanted to put some end date so that they could pause and evaluate the efficacy. Yes, it's not because they think it's
Do
trigger.
you know, just, you might get to this, do you know what percentage of our faculty are vaccinated at this point in time, or at least have one shot because one informs the next?
I cannot ask for that data.
Okay.
I know that the faculty who have sought the vaccine have all had access. And I can come close to saying that that's been a lot of people, but we cannot ask people, we cannot track definitively those numbers. We're not allowed to.
Yeah, it's someone's health information, but I think the response has been positive though, too.
The response has been overwhelmingly positive.
Great.
Yes. All right. So again, I just throw a few more considerations that our reopening committee is going to need to look at. Not only the guidelines and results of the survey, but we're wanting to minimize the impact to schedules. If we're going to engage in change, we don't want a change that's going to require us to redo the whole high school master schedule or to redo all the elementary master schedule. We want to minimize the impact of changing teachers at the elementary school. We don't want our students who are coming in who have had the same teacher and the same little family all year for that to be disrupted. I would argue that some of the key to the great academic performance that we saw at the elementary is due to our current models. And you probably remember when you're in elementary school what happens when one new kid comes into your classroom, right? It's like a whole new family and we're reestablishing norms. I'm not making reasons not to consider this. I'm just sharing some of the things that this committee will inevitably want to talk about. We're looking to, is it possible to develop models that still maintain those choices for families, especially those who are going to require that remote-only option? And how do we do all of this without adding to the already satiated load of our teachers? But we also round to make decisions on what we believe to be best for our students. We are a student-first district, and we'll continue to be driven by that. I talked a little bit about transportation and food service. We need to pay attention to class sizes. There are contractual requirements that we can't exceed for class sizes in both buildings. And yes, this assumes continued use of masks, health screenings, all the other health and safety protocols that we currently have in place. Any other questions on that? All right, guys, I'm gonna bring it home. So let's talk for a minute now, big picture, because we will survive COVID. There will be a post-COVID era. And what are some kind of things that we are thinking about that get us kind of back to normal? So in addition to managing the daily COVID waves that come at us every day, we're also talking bigger picture about how do we expand and offer graduation pathways for all of our students. You heard Mr. Dewey talking a little bit about just the CTE programs. But how do we start to replicate that here in Delaware Academy to make sure that every senior who's leaving our building leaves with an employability profile that they can take to college or the workforce? How do we continue to engage our parents and guardians and students in planning for their futures, starting as early as kindergarten? And then what do those conversations morph to in middle school? And how do they continue to develop over time? How do we make decisions that are student-centered, based on student interests? The decision to run certain electives should be based on what our students need that is aligned with the graduation pathway that they are on that trajectory toward achieving. That means student interest surveys and a student understanding what coursework. So let them know in 9th grade, what is my pathway, what is the coursework I will need to get the diploma that I know that I can achieve, regardless of what diploma type that is. So we will be taking a look at all of our current programs. We'll be looking at, and when we think about college and career preparations, and because this is budget season, we're also talking a lot about this, but we don't make decisions just based on that. We make decisions that align with our program and our mission and our district goals. So we'll be looking at our current programs and how can we continue to do better to give access to all of our students at Delaware Academy, to enjoy a college and career focus for all of our kids. How do we make sure our students are all engaged in career explorations, have opportunities for work-based learning, internships, shadowing, those kind of things for all of our students? How do we ensure that we have those exit credentials that align with any diploma type? In New York State, we're over 20 different diploma types. And our students should know which one is the best fit for them. And then how do we individualize those pathways for every single student? All right, I promised you I'd bring it home. So I ended the presentation when I spoke with our teachers and asked them a little bit of a different question. Have you ever survived surfing? And the quick answer is, when you survive surfing, you reflect on your progress. You reflect on those challenges and how that made you better. And when you leave that surfing site to go get back in your van or your tour bus or whatever, you leave with the same group of people that you came there with. There's no man behind here. And we will continue to make decisions and reflect on the progress that we make as a district. So, I'm going to ask one more time for questions, but I'll also ask you to reflect on, I presented a ton of information. And this is a rhetorical question. What new understandings do you have? And what questions do you still have? Kim?
I have questions that you kind of ended at a good spot, because I wasn't sure if this was appropriate to ask now, but going back to the BOCES presentation, so I just need clarification, I guess, on what programs the kids, like, do they go to SUNY Delhi for automotive? Do they go to SUNY Delhi for business? Or do they go to BOCES?
That's a
They do both?
It's a great question. The same child does not do both.
Okay.
So we do have a large number of students who go to BOCES for the Career and Technical Education program. We also have a much smaller group of students who go to CTEP. And the CTEP program is the co-articulation that we have with SUNY Delhi.
Okay.
Now, where they get kind of, I guess, confused sometimes is that they both are those that have that hands-on, industry-based results, but is a different profile of student who attends each of those programs.
So are there I'm assuming it's still a limited couple of programs that we do for Delaware Tech, for SUNY Delaware. Like all of these
Yes.
that they can do at BOCES, we don't
Correct,
do at SUNY Delaware, right?
Correct.
Okay.
correct.
So I guess I was under the impression that we don't do automotive at BOCES anymore, we do it here, but that's not the case.
That is far from the case.
Thank you.
So after tonight's presentation, as we move through budget season, and I will be asking our directors and our principals to give us more of a presentation on current programs
Okay, awesome.
that help to inform where we're going to move.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Beth?
This is kind of, the New York State Health Department isn't going to suddenly demand that all schools open on June 1st, right? That is not, do you see something like that coming down the line?
Will the New York State Health Department require that everybody return immediately?
Yes,
I do not anticipate that in my wildest dreams.
not me either, I just.
Not the role of the New York State Department of Health. Their role will be to provide parameters and guidelines and updates to the current regulatory guidance. The New York State Education Department would have the authority to do that, but I also do not see that being a requirement in this year. What I do see is advocacy on that part, because the New York State Education Department does feel that that is what's best for students, because they're particularly sensitive to those mental health needs and the declining achievement, some of our more vulnerable populations.
And does our local Department of Health adopt whatever the New York State Department of Health?
That's up to them, but from what I understand, they will yield to the New York State Department of Health.
So I'm sorry, clarify, the county will yield to the New York State?
That are preliminary conversations, I have no definitive indication of that. But Kim, you bring up a good point, they could add additional guidance and information and requirements surrounding that.
And we would have to follow that?
Correct.
We're just getting our layers.
What's that?
Getting to know our layers.
That's right, no, you're asking great questions. So there are many things that I don't have the answers to yet. And information is coming out all the time. I do continue to try my best to turn key information as soon as I have it, even if I don't have all the answers that I anticipate people will ask.
Kelly,
yeah.
I was surprised by the low number of elementary teachers that responded in the survey. Any indication why or any idea why?
I don't know.
It was 15, I think in high school it was almost 40. And it was just I was surprised at that. We know too many.
How many elementary teachers do we have?
Well,
So we had a total of 59 faculty and staff who responded. When I pulled these numbers, I was counting just teaching staff. So here, if you add this, it's 51. So we had 8 people who were, perhaps a bus driver who had responded. Not that that input's not important, but looking at the implications for classroom instruction, I just pulled out teachers here. But of that 51, 36 middle and high school and 15 elementary. That's right. I do not have a sense of why.
They all know that it's for them to fill out too, right? They all know that?
Yes. Sean?
You mentioned the reopening committee.
Yes.
I'm curious what role they'll play in providing guidance and what actions will have, going forward, how will that play in the decision making, where they ultimately, the decision making committee?
Ultimately, are they
Provide
the decision making?
recommendations.
No, they are providing recommendations. Yes. And it will be similar to the experience of when we established the parameters for reopening. They provided recommendations. If you participated, you probably remember that long shared Google Doc, right? And the resulting reopening plan was pretty darn close to a lot of the recommendations that came out of that committee. I anticipate that this will be no different, but they will not be the ultimate decision maker. But if anybody knows my leadership style, you'll quickly know that I also do not ignore advice and recommendations that I put a lot of faith and a lot of stock into making, group-based decisions and engaging stakeholders in decision-making.
And how much longer is that survey open?
I don't know. It's still open right now. It'll probably remain open through this process. Other comments may come in, as we continue to have conversations. Someone may want to go in and clarify. We may get guidance from the Department of Health that completely changes the tables for consideration. And then somebody may have a difference in opinion or a change of heart.
So then, when that committee forms a plan and there's recommendations, will we come back together as a group and go through something like this again?
I haven't gotten that far. But a lot of it is gonna depend on the timing of the guidance that comes out, and then the work of the committee, and then the establishment of that re-entry timeframe and that phased approach. And I don't know what that's going to look like, because I haven't heard from everybody yet. I've heard some very compelling arguments and things for consideration, and the data that I just shared to inform that. But once we have that, I would anticipate another formal presentation to our community in some way, shape, or form, similar to what we did for reopening. And we also will need to write an addendum to our reopening plan. So that will all be presented so that everybody knows, I gotta send my kid to school on this date for that. We don't have those dates yet. Those have not been established. That will also be informed by this committee.
Which is the same committee, I'm assuming, from.
I asked Mr. Schultz to pull out that list. We have some people who aren't with us anymore, but for the most part, it will look similar to that same committee who went through that journey with us in the fall. Okay, anything else? Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your trust. And thanks for hanging in there with us as we continue to navigate the waves.
Thank you, Mrs. Zimmerman.
Of course. You got that, Lee?
All right, moving along on our agenda, going to public comments for public and across the board. Public comments are submitted to the district clerk prior to the board meeting and will be read. I have an email from Lauren O'Leary. I'm just going to read it to you directly as she stated. As I am sure you have been following, trans athletes have become center stage of the media. There have been some mumbles and growing transphobia in some personal Facebook pages here in town. It is making me nervous for the safety of these children. I am asking that you, this would be us, put this topic on your radar. While I love my community, they often form opinions about facts. I wonder if you and the board could get ahead of this issue. Post a statement, or even better, a special trans awareness portion of the school board meeting that is posted on social media with an actual doctor reporting the New York laws and dealing with trans students and athletes, who I am sure you are aware suffer from much higher risk of suicide. Sometimes it is better to wait and see, and other times it is better to be a leader. I will leave that for you to decide. One thing I know for certain, we have trans students in our community, and no child should feel attacked in their hometown. Thank you for your time, Lauren O'Leary. Thank you. And also, if anyone else would like to read this. Moving on, routine matters. I'd like to do A and B at the same time. The minutes of the regular meeting held on the 22nd of February, and the meeting minutes approved for the budget workshop that we held on March 1st. A motion, please. So moved. Thank you, Tammy. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sean. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion is carried. All right, number C, we have personnel recommendations. I want to go through. Lucy, do you feel you need to, Bill's on that, Bill Mobley.
Well, he rescinded.
So it does, yeah, I just wanted to.
Yep.
And Sean's on there, so we want to go through, I am not going to pronounce that name correctly, student teacher Samantha. I want to have a vote through William Oget. Okay.
Sam Kopskit, I just messed it up too.
Yeah, I didn't know.
Yes.
That's good for
proud to say. I met her, she's wonderful.
A motion, please? And a second? Second. Thank you, Tammy. Any questions? So we're just gonna go through William. Okay. So any questions or comments?
Yes. I just want to bring to your attention that one of those is a retirement.
Remind me again.
Megan Hannigan.
Oh, Mrs. Hannigan? That's because it's Miss Quinton. I do take that one very personally. I had Miss Quinton as a 7th grade math teacher just a few years ago. And she was wonderful, and she got me through the class, and that was a big feat, it really is, so we do appreciate her service to our school district for, the little time she's here. But we appreciate her, and she's an absolutely wonderful teacher.
35 years.
What is it, 35? Yeah. So thank you, Mrs. Hannigan, for all of your wonderful years here. Oh my goodness, Mrs. Hannigan. Okay, so, and I also want to thank Mrs. DeBoer for hosting a student teacher. That is a wonderful thing to do for our school district. All right, so any other questions or comments? All in favor?
We're not done.
Oh, we're not?
Up to.
I'm just what.
Okay. Okay. So but you can't vote this, so you can't vote for that, right? Or you can vote this one, so. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion is carried. Now we can go through to Mr. Newman. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion is carried. Mrs. Newman has abstained. And now for Francis Pardee, those are all, they're all rescinded, no, they're not. All in favor? With Mr. Pardee through the rescind for John Virgo. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion is carried.
Can I just make one more recognition?
Absolutely.
That within the appointments, we have a handful of permanent appointments that were switched from temporary because they've achieved, I believe that's a 6-month probationary period. And so that is Mr. Buggy, Mr. Sissio, who's here with us tonight. Where are you, Dave?
He's right there.
There he is. Yes, yes. We just still so thrilled to have him here. And Connie Sherman as well. So congratulations to those who have achieved that 6-month permanent appointment.
We voted those. Yes. All right, financial reports. A motion, please.
So,
Thank you, Seth, and second.
Okay.
Thank you, Kim. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion is carried. We do not have any CSE recommendations for March 2021. So now for reports, principals' monthly reports. We will begin with Mrs. Newell. Thank you.
So good evening. I don't have a whole lot today. I have been completing the observation cycle. You just approved hiring one of our LTAs who is certified to be an elementary education teacher. I'm thrilled to have her as a long-term sub for Mrs. Januszewski, who will be having a baby here in April. So we're happy to have Mrs. Jen McGonigal joining us in the 4th grade team. I took part in an administration retreat, and I've been having team meetings with each of my grade levels over the last week, and we're talking about students and getting ready for the end of this year and into next year. And one of the most fun things that happened in the past month is we had a bulldog boost. And that was not me, it was Allison Yando and her SAD chapter. And they came up and had one of the members dressed in the bulldog costume, and a whole bunch of the rest of them had pom-poms and were cheering for the kids as they left. It started first with Allison sending a PowerPoint to each of the classroom teachers to share with the kids. The first one said, do you know that you're a bulldog? Then it went into what is a mascot? They had athletes from 1939, 1951, 1985. I have to say, my husband was in that picture. And where might you find the bulldog? At parades, at things where we're celebrating our bulldog spirit. And if you happen to see the bulldog, wave and say hi, give him an elbow bump, and cheer Go Bulldogs, which helped even our littlest guys not be afraid the day that the bulldog was up there, because some of them are. And I was watching this whole thing unfold and cheering with the kids, and it was just a lot of fun to watch, and the kids were going by and elbow bumping. And some of the kids didn't get the chance to bump as they went by. So I'm watching, and this really little guy gets off the bus, and he's walking through all these big kids, adult kids, and trying to weave his way through. And now I'm chasing him because he got off the bus, and I'm thinking, where is he going? And I said, where are you going, buddy? He goes, I'm gonna see the bulldog. And I said, okay, you can see the bulldog. So I took him over and he met the bulldog. But he was that excited that he got off the bus to do it. But we were there, we found him, but it was a lot of fun. And they did it for both the maroon and white cohort, and we taped it for the bulldog gray cohort. So, and the bulldog and the kids stayed right through our walkers leaving and being picked up. So it was a lot of fun. Any questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Mrs. Robin, local preschool.
Okay, well, first I want to just recognize Peggy Hannigan. Since I've been here, she's been a wealth of knowledge for me, a real leader in, a lot of different things, and we'll definitely miss her. So congratulations on your retirement, though, wherever you are, because hopefully she's listening. All right, now I promised Mr. Schultz that I'm not going to read all of this. I have a long report, but let me explain what I did. I knew what Kelly was going to be presenting tonight, and I know that our middle school, high school grades are not what we're accustomed to. I think in my reflection, I would probably have tried to bring back 8th, 9th, and 10th grades full-time. Is all I'm going to leave it there, because they really have struggled with the hybrid model. And so that is one of the reasons why those grades are not looking as strong as they normally would. But we're going to keep working on, everything that we need to do to help them show that they are still the students we know that they are. This is just really, knocked them for a loop. But so what I decided to do this morning was ask my teachers to send me what they're doing that's, could be something to really boast about, because they're doing so many things. And I don't often, really give them that at our board meetings. And so they sent me 3 pages. And all I did was copy and paste it, but I just wanted to read, in general, if I can summarize some of these. A big congratulations to Jessica Coleman, who completed her term as New York FCCLA Vice President. And a shout out to Ashley Komazinski, who was installed as the New York FCCLA Vice President of Competitive Events. The state meetings are all virtual this year, but they're still doing all their stuff. And this is the other thing I love about our teachers, is that they always brag on the students when I ask them to brag about themselves. So the New York State FFA Association is hosting their District 4 Leadership Contest, and all of the DAFFA members who participated are advancing now to their sub-stage, which will start on Friday, March 28th. And they have participants qualifying for a spot in the New York Finals in agricultural issues, prepared public speaking, creed speaking, and junior people in agriculture and employment skills. So that is a huge honor. We have 4 members qualified for the Empire degree, the highest award at the state level, and 5 proficiency awards. They've also nominated Assemblyman Brian Miller for the New York State FFA honorary Empire degree for all that he does for their FFA chapter. Creative writing. They are actually hosting a time for the famous poet, Dr. Barbara Unger. That's one of the good things about Zoom meetings. You can get these famous people to actually, do a Zoom meeting for your students. So Meg Ainsworth has set that up, and it's for all of her creative writing class and club members. So they're really excited because she's a very famous published poet. She's also doing the Corona Comeback Talent Show. And that's gonna be in May, she hopes. Kids are being filmed on stage with the lights, so it looks like a real deal show. And the acts have been, fabulous so far. And there will be the famous faculty finale at the end, so, like I'm usually in that, just making a fool out of myself, but. The 2-year edition of Ariel, which is their creative writing, literary, and art magazine, is being published still this year. And when it comes out, she'll be sure to pass along copies for the board through Kelly's office. The National Junior Honor Society created an I Have a Dream bulletin board, and that was inspired by the Martin Luther King Jr. And that's been pretty awesome. It's near the cafeteria as you're walking in. And they also posted inspiring quotes all over the building about influential Black Americans for Black History Month. And they plan to participate in the Community Service Day in Delhi in April, as well as the DA Fair in May to celebrate the opening of DA's time capsule. The American Association of Teachers of German National Exam, we had someone, do the top level, and I think she belongs to someone in this room, Mr. Patraziba's daughter. And then 17 Achievement Award recipients. The German class is doing amazing things. They're still really practicing, and all those proficiencies are still happening. And, we're hoping that the students that actually have obtained those great scores will still be able to go to Germany eventually, because that's one of the things that comes along with that. He also wanted me to mention that on Welcoming Wednesdays, and he's just doing this to make a fool out of me. He is doing Kachen mit Herrleg. I can't even say it. I should have, one of the students here. Potato pancakes and curry sausage. We've been doing different things on our Wednesdays, and he's been cooking in his classroom, even though Dave doesn't want him to. And then we also had Mrs. Rosner celebrated Pie Day last Monday. And how many apple pies did you have?
Well, we had individual things this year, but it was great. We had a great time.
Yeah, she had a big party for Pie Day. We also have the school musical, all right? So most of the rest of this is the school musical. And Mr. West wanted me to thank all of these people. But basically, 26 students have been safely rehearsing for the past 6 weeks. They've completed 2/5 of their filming. It's in full swing. Miss Carlson has taught nearly 30 songs to the cast that are all over the place as far as genre and difficulty. And Miss James has built an amazing prop bathtub with the help of her 6th grade students. Miss Jackson painted 3 bathtubs and created almost 30 colorful fish. Ms. Coleman has helped pull together all the props and the costumes. She made the most amazing purple overalls you have ever seen. Sarah Wake, on top of absolutely slaying her 2 solos, Sarah has also stepped up and acted as Anna, an amazing leader during rehearsals. She's also even directing some of the scenes. Ms. Lindner has led an amazing kit of musicians, all students, to support several of the musical numbers. Matt White, he says, what an amazing human being to work with. Matt White is our PR specialist from DCMO BOCES, and he is helping with all sorts of things with the musical. Lauren Davis is helping design the poster. Ms. Berger is volunteering 2 afternoons a week to help with the lights. Every single student in the cast has just put in tons and tons of time, and they're having a great time. I could go on and on complimenting people for their work on the musical. They simply are that amazing to work with. It takes a village, she says. Economics class, Mrs. McGrath held a Shark Tank competition this last week, and several of us were judges. First place, Sophia, with her I Love Pizza. Second place, Jody with the magic mat. Third place, Brandon with the car key jacket. And fourth place, Nate with the phantom desk. And finally, I just got a text from Ro Avila saying, don't forget to tell them about her, they did the play, The Trojan Horse. And honestly, I mean, what she has been able to get those kids to memorize, to do that Trojan Horse, it was absolutely amazing. And she does it, you know, with the next group, after they see what that group can do, and she's got a whole process. It really is amazing that sixth graders can do that, so that's my report. Sorry, it was a little fast. Our teachers are wonderful.
Any questions for Mrs. Robbins about all of that? Okay, no, you're off the hook now. Okay. All right, departmental reports. Mr. Ferrara, athletics.
Okay, good evening, everyone. We just finished a very successful winter season, and we have since transitioned to our fall sports season. It's been a transition that has surely taught us patience. The first week, Mr. Sissio and I watched the snow melt off our fields. The second week, we watched the mud on our fields begin to dry to dirt, and we still monitor them on a daily basis. He had his crew out there today, the first day we've been able to get on them because they've been firm enough. We started to paint our ball fields. And now that they're getting painted, we're starting to transition some of our teams out of the gym and onto the fields. But we're doing that in a very delicate manner. We want to preserve our fields. We've had a couple meetings with some of the stakeholders to discuss how we use our fields, how much damage we can do to the fields at a time of year where grass doesn't grow as well. When the roots of the grass haven't really taken, and we can tear it up fairly rapidly if we don't use it in a very diligent manner. So even though we've transitioned to outside, it's going to be a slow transition. We're still going to work some days in the gym, some days outdoors, utilizing our fields primarily for our home games. And that's a priority to us. We talked a lot about our decision-making factors and motivating factors. Right now, our biggest motivating factor is to get our kids in front of their parents on our home fields for games. We can do that up until the weather prevents us from doing it, or until the point we do too much damage to utilize our home fields. We're going to rotate through them. We're going to run, at this point, a minimum number of home games. We're using neutral sites for some of our games. Some of the more local fields that have turf. We played our first football game on turf this weekend. It's more than likely we will play our football game this coming Saturday at a neutral site. We're going to try to get a game or two a week out on our field and assess it each week to see where we stand. That being said, the second Pixel-Lot is getting installed Wednesday on Dave Kelly Field. So we should be able to, by Thursday or Friday, start live streaming our outdoor activities to the community to watch through the same NFHS network that we use in our gymnasiums. We are still working on ways to live stream our indoor events like volleyball that is taking place now, and events that will take place at the Legion. And we'll have more information on that in the near future. Volleyball senior recognition is tomorrow night, along with our picture day for our athletes. We're doing all of our pictures in a socially distant manner and having them, what do they call it when they crop the kids in? Photoshopping our team photos. They actually turned out really nice in the fall. I think the kids will be proud. And Friday we have girls senior recognition soccer coming up. And that's all I have for you tonight. Any questions?
Any questions? Thank you for all of your efforts, guys. This has been quite a year for you. We appreciate it. Really appreciate it. Mr. Ciccio, buildings and grounds.
Well, first off, I guess I'd like to say, thanks to my crew. As you know, we just got done with snow. We home, okay, it's New York.
We're not done with
They, for about 4 weeks there, all of them were in here at 4 o'clock in the morning to help remove snow, get snow out of the way. Right now, we just hired a new guy, but we are down either one person or two person many nights of the week. A lot of guys will stay late from the day crew, some of them will stay late from the night crew to make sure we have everything completely cleaned the way we feel that it should be cleaned. They just started the building project up here. That's getting underway. They will be starting April 5th with the site work. So that will be getting started. We'll have to kind of figure out how we're gonna work that, where they're gonna go. Other than that, Jeff and I, like he took half my speech. We've been working on the fields, get them so we can get them when it's ready to go and making sure that they're safe to play on as well as we don't destroy them. But other than that, we're pretty good.
All right, any questions? You are, thank you, congratulations on your goodness. All right, Mr. Schultz, business administrator.
I want to start by saying, I never said anything to Robin today about going short with her speech. I knew Kelly was going to present tonight, so the whole night was shot. So, free for all. Yeah, I didn't talk about that today, did I? No, I didn't, all right.
I know you did.
Well, I did.
You always do, and if I'd shown it to you, you would have freaked.
It seemed like you did read the whole thing. You really did.
I did.
So, piggyback, we were talking earlier about Department of Health. Mandy Walsh did put out a press release, or kind of a one sheet this afternoon.
All right.
One of the things, I think the question was, if you're fully vaccinated, is there a time limit? There's no time limit right now. Fully vaccinated, you're fine. And yeah, the 90-day question is, I think, just a placeholder to see where they can assess things at that point, so. I would say that, the question about staff and being vaccinated, we've done everything we can on a weekly basis to throw out invitations to people to take on appointments, make their own appointments. We've done some stuff locally here too that has assisted with that. I think we've got quite a few of our staff, but so we don't know exactly the number, but I would say there's a majority at least of vaccinated staff members. So. Budget continues to be built. We're probably about 95% done right now. In expenses, still working a little bit in special education. Revenue, of course, that's a big picture right now. We don't have any new aid runs at this time. There's a lot of speculation. Schumer, majority leader, we did come out with some numbers last Thursday, I think it was. They're promising, they're optimistic. I don't know if it's something that we can probably present yet as far as what that, the aid package, it was only a number. It did not talk about length, it did not talk about how it was gonna be implemented, it didn't talk about terms, so, but it was a pretty promising number, I would say that. But we're about probably, as of today, about $120,000 deficit as far as building the budget. Like I said, 95% done, we can still work with some revenue. I'm pretty optimistic. There was I didn't listen to it today, but there was a speech by the governor. It said that all the aid cuts that were presented in the first run, they were possibly going to restore. So that came from him. That was actually his budget director. I don't know if it came directly from him. So other than that, capital project is underway. Site work is April 5th. I think they're still online for asbestos abatement March 29th, so a week from today. They'll slowly start to do work. Phase 1 is basically over in the corner near the cafeteria, underneath the cafeteria. No effect to students or staff, but we will start in that area first and work our way over, and that should be done before the end of the school year. So far, so good with the capital project. We've done a few tours and looked at what they're doing, and they've done a lot of demo. Slowly start to rebuild it probably in the next couple weeks. Any questions?
I have a question. So this, I don't know if Jeff could speak on this, but I didn't really wanna put Jeff on the spot, so I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Oh, thanks.
My question is about tennis and the tennis court. Is there going to be tennis this year? Is tennis one of the sports we're playing this year?
Yes, April, it'll.
And what is the status of our tennis court for the tennis?
So we have a company called, is it Copeland Surfacing?
Copeland, yes.
They'll be here tomorrow.
Yes, and what's gonna happen?
So the only thing that they can do with those tennis courts at this time is any cracks, what they can do is if they're unlevel, they can grind them down.
Okay,
Did you want to, did you want?
no, I don't want, I just need I think we need just a nice playable, I think, are they just gonna like, so all the, you have black filled cracks?
I don't know. We've only done this once before. Usually what they do is then if the surfaces are uneven where the cracks are, they grind them down so they're flat, then they will seal them. It's not a permanent fix.
Yeah.
This is temporary.
So budget-wise, what's the plan going forward, so we actually have a playable court for
So the only way to do this is either do this option that we're looking at, and they're coming out again tomorrow, they're coming out tomorrow to assess the needs that we have. The only other option would be to completely repair, take those courts right out.
which I think they need.
That is an alternate within the project currently. That was voted on by the Board of Education.
How can we get that in our budget so we have playable courts?
The only way to do that currently is if the project becomes under budget, then the alternates can be pulled in. Or the district is willing to sacrifice something within the current project. So what we did is, before this went out to bid back, I wanna say in 2018, 2019, there was a discussion, actually no, it was in 2019, of what was gonna be alternates and what was gonna be part of the bid package. That was pulled out as an alternate.
I understand that, and I don't, this is not directed at any one person, but I guess I'm just, I'm disappointed that the courts got to the point they're at, and I don't understand, it's a sport, it's one of the sports that we pay for and we have here. And I don't know why it takes a back seat that there's not some type of, like 5-year plan or 10-year plan that, okay, this, every 10, I don't know how long tennis courts last, but there's gotta be some type of repair cycle, like there is for the basketball courts or football fields or something, you know what I mean? There has to be like some type of cycle that I just feel like it's taken a back seat, and it's the one sport they can leave high school and play every day of their life. I don't know, I'm not directing it at you, I would just like the district to have, I just think it's the right thing to do, to put the money into the tennis court, to make it right. I'm not asking for, no, I don't want like this grandiose, new seating and all that, no, I just think we need legit. I mean, I've been on those tennis courts, filling the cracks is, they need more than that, they do. I mean, I appreciate that, but I think that's just putting a Band-Aid on it, and when then will it become a priority that it's gonna be in a budget to get what needs to really be done out there to have a legit court, that's all.
So I'll say this real quick, so to repair those courts, it's not a real quick fix.
Yeah.
You can do a quick fix, we did it about 2 or 3 years ago, we had the same company come out and fix those cracks. At that time, we were pushing for a capital project, we had a capital project in the works. It was stalled a little bit here and there due to, unforeseen circumstances. So those tennis court, and then was pulled as an alternate. So that's not a decision made by central administration, but made as a whole, all stakeholders. As far as repairing those can be repaired, but it's just like a foundation. Once that heaves, to really fix that has to be dug out. And it's a big project.
If it's heaving, maybe drainage needs to get put underneath it, I don't know why.
I didn't put it, they're probably 25 years old.
But if we did a quick fix 3 years ago, now we're doing another quick fix. I'm just saying, I think it would be nice to do it right. So I'm just hoping,
Right,
I
that's
guess
what I was
I'm just asking
That's just trying to
if
get out.
it can be not forgotten. That's
So
all.
to do that whole court, to do those courts and to rip those out, you're talking tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that's not in a regular budget cycle, something that can happen year to year. So when, to do a repair, to do a major work out there, besides doing just crack repair, correct me if I'm wrong, David, is basically ripping them out, redoing the subsurface and drainage if needed, and then repouring them. Am I correct?
So if I can clarify too, Kim, a couple points. You had asked about why are we not in a replacement cycle in tennis courts like we are for the basketball?
Are we for basketball? I don't know. I have no
And we
idea.
do not have regular replacement cycles for any one particular athletic facility, nor do we prioritize one sport or over another. I know sometimes that's a perception here.
It's my perception. It is,
No,
especially
that's fair, but I just want to go on the record as saying that we are not prioritizing one particular facility over another. That being said, Mr. Schultz is exactly right, that we are repairing that. We know that that is temporary, so that they can be playable this spring. However, we have within the Capital Project Committee and Finance Committee and Athletic Committee actually, talked about what are some ways that we can move that up and prioritize that. Part of it's gonna depend on capital project, because that is where currently it is budgeted for as a bid alternate. That will depend on progress within the project to see how much of that can or should be allocated to that. And if not, what are alternate ways that we can rectify that sooner rather than pushing that off to another project. So we share the same sense of urgency that you're communicating, and we are trying to find ways to do that. I wish it was as simple as saying we're in a budget cycle, we can put that into next year's budget. But something of that scope, I mean, you've seen within Mr. Schultz's budget presentations thus far, it's simply not tenable because what needs to be replaced. However, in 3 different board committees, we are looking at ways to make sure that that gets done without waiting till the next project.
Okay, I appreciate that.
So we truly are, and if anybody who sits on any of those committees wants to add to
Yeah,
that.
we discussed it on Thursday, Kim, just to try to get that company, when they did it, I think it was Copeland last time. It lasted a couple of years knowing that we were trying to get it in the project. So this, like Kelly said, we'll get it ready for this year. And then hopefully there's flexibility within the capital project, depending on where that comes out, where they can do the, the permanent, well, not permanent, but a longer lasting redo.
So when they come out now, are they just filling cracks or like, there's puddles? Even if it's not a crack, there's gonna be puddles. No, there's still.
As far as I know, that the company we've only had them address cracks. I mean, you're talking about settling, that's all underneath of that. That's not something that I think that they do. At least that's not what we're asking them to do. You have to understand that when we do something large like a tennis court or tennis courts, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. So to take that out of the regular general fund budget as a cycle is not advantageous to the district because you're not getting anything back for it.
Well,
To have that included as a capital project, the district pays about 30 cents on a dollar.
Okay, so I was just gonna ask you, what do other school districts do?
Capital project.
Okay, so.
That's all the major infrastructures.
I guess I'm just disappointed that it didn't get prioritized in this then, because it's pretty,
Chairman, if I
it's in pretty poor shape, that's all.
jump in just to give you insight as a little bit of why it might have gotten to where it got, and it is pretty bad out there. Others are struggling too. The college is actually using our courts this Saturday.
Their courts are bad too?
To play collegiate
Worse.
tennis.
Worse.
Oh, because I was thinking we
They're
would go
thrilled to
there.
come and use ours.
Oh,
ours.
Sorry, Jeff.
Better than theirs. But like Harry said, the magnitude of the project is something that just comes around when it's a building project. Last building project we had, it probably could have been thought about and done. At the current time, we didn't have a tennis team. Back in like 2013, we lost our tennis program due to lack of participation. I don't know the first year it came back, I bet Mr. Hay does.
Yeah, it was 2 years.
But don't they use it for PE? That's where I learned to play tennis was, I mean, I was on the tennis team, but I also played in PE class, tennis.
We
I mean,
do,
which-
and it had sufficed for what we were trying to get out of a PE class as far as teaching, motions and body movements. It started to go downhill during that time when we didn't have a team and it wasn't glaringly obvious to us all again until we were again producing a tennis team that was playing competitive matches on our courts at Delaware, and we started to wonder why there was 3-inch wide cracks in but
All right, thank you, thank you.
Use
Appreciate
it
it.
for instructional purposes though is a good point, because that's what allows it to be aidable.
Oh, good, yeah.
And I'm just gonna just add that we did look hard at the tennis program as a board. And we did look, and of course drainage did come up. And then it was, well, our architect said, well, if we have the drainage, then we should have sidewalks. And then the sidewalks and then a higher fencing to go up. And it came out to the quote was like $1 million project, just for the tennis court. And we realized there was no way our taxpayers would be able to handle that type of bid. And not saying that we can't be pared down, but that's one of the reasons our rationale was, yes, we know we need it, but there's no way.
Well, then I guess the district needs to make like a decision, are we having tennis in tennis courts or aren't we? Because it's just silly that to have them in disrepair like that. Either get rid of them or we don't have them or do it right, which I understand is really expensive, but.
No, we have committed to doing it right. We are going to have tennis. We have many members of our community who use the tennis courts. I bet you they'll be out there this week, as soon as the weather gets nice. So that is a priority for the
Well,
district.
I'm excited that they can use it for this season, so thank you.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Carrie.
Good evening. And Ms. Haneke, I just have to start off with our years here. March 6th is my 15 years, and today is 15 years and 16 days, so. Thank you. So first, I just always talk about our numbers. In our elementary school, we are right around 160 breakfasts and 160 lunches. And I have to say thank you to my staff and Julie's crew of LTAs and everybody that just jumps in and gets those meals from the middle school, up the hill, on the carts, to the classrooms. It just takes a team to just make this seamless. Hopefully the students aren't noticing as much. So our high school, we still have our kiosk out here in the lobby, and we have students coming and they're eating in the high school, they're eating in the middle school, and we're doing about 180 lunches. And I talked to my staff trying to see where we can get more participation, where can we pull more students in. So we had last month 50 meals going out to our hybrid students and our fully remote. And then we looked at our backpack students, and we have roughly 30 backpack students. And I said, we need to capture those backpack students that aren't participating in the fully remote meals. So now when Greg's team takes those backpacks, they're also taking more meals with them to those fully remote kids. So we're just anywhere we can find more meals, more students, and get those children fed, that's what we're all about. So again, I can't thank my staff enough. They are just working every day from 6:15 to 1 o'clock. So just nonstop. So that's all I have. Any questions, comments?
I know you've talked to us before, but again, there was a concern about the amount of styrofoam being used. Can you just address it as briefly as you can?
Yes.
About why that over some other type of material?
With our elementary students, everything is disposable up there. Everything is being transported. It's very minimal because it's a grab and go. Our numbers have never been as high. We have never had 160 breakfasts ever in the 15 years that I've been here, but we take up a box of just grab and go breakfast. It's juice, it's fruit, it's pastries, it's muffins, it's granola bars, and so that's like minimal waste. And then with our lunches, everything is disposable. We're transporting it in the school vans and taking it up and throwing it away. We have no dishwashers, we have no staff, nothing comes back. So our high school, middle school, everything is disposable because they're taking it from the high school cafeteria and they walk all the way to the middle school cafeteria and then they sit down and eat their lunch, a group of them. So again, everything is just convenience, quick, easy, disposable. And the only dishwasher is our high school dishwasher. Because we have food moving all over the building, so.
So Chris, how does that compare to a typical year, or is this just a function of COVID and our protocols and all the lunches in the classrooms and?
COVID, 100% COVID. Yep, in regular year, we have our 5 compartment trays. The students go through the line, they sit down, they eat their lunch at their table with their friends. They get up and they take their dishes to the dish room and neatly stack them until my staff can get back and run them through the dishwasher, wash their hands and go back. It's just a constant loop. Our pre-COVID disposable was like next to nothing. It was the students that were in Mr. Pecori's class that just kept going the rest of the day. Like they never had a lunch break. So that was the only time we were disposable.
Even as a staff member here, I brought my plate to the lunch to get my food. I didn't take a styrofoam back to my office.
Right, we were very conscious of our, phone uses. We even tried to, when Mrs. Davina was here, we tried to switch to a recycle board because I'm not a big foam fan, but you can't transport food in a recycled cardboard container. It does not hold up in what I needed to do. So.
Thank you for explaining. And this is not a permanent thing at all. This will end when,
Chris, a special shout out today, one of my sons came home and asked, usually do the how was your day? And I don't know what was served today.
Sweet and sour chicken.
That was popular. So it was noted as a highlight of the day. No offense to everybody else who did that day, but that was noted, so.
Yeah, and that was a big hit.
I passed that line, wrote that down just to make sure.
High school, middle school, and we were running our elementary lunches, and we have our menu order sheets from the teachers that I absolutely love. And all of them were going down through, and I'm like, they're not taking the chicken. And it was all yogurts and peanut butter and jellies, and I was like, no. We put so much effort into these menus, and my staff are cooking the chicken. They have 3 different dipping sauces, and they're mixing the chicken as they go, and I just can't say enough about my staff. I can't. But I will let them know.
That was great, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Special Education Student Services, Sheer.
Good evening, everyone. Eat honey. I was worried I was gonna have to go after Carrie, so thank goodness there.
No, you got all night, go ahead.
Got all night.
Grab a book.
So the last time that I was with you, I just started my visitation tour. So in the last 2 months, I have been able to visit all of our students and all of our out-of-district placements. And those that we couldn't actually be together in person, I was able to Zoom with them. So our friends at Springbrook, Children's Home Wyoming, Sydney, we were able to Zoom. Our teachers and the program directors have just been so amazing to help me understand their programs and our students that are there. Can't say enough about that. That was really fun. And also, I did a couple tours in the Albany area to look at some programs that we're aspiring to have here at Delaware Academy. So that was another day and a nice learning opportunity for me. Annual reviews are going very, very well, and I think the most important thing is that we've had excellent attendance from our families. So grateful that they're participating in these meetings, and it just brings such value, so can't thank them enough.
In person or is it Zoom?
It's all Zoom. It's all Zoom. The big projects that we're working on right now are RTI and our AIS district plan. Julie and Robin and I have been meeting at 7 in the morning. We'll meet again on Wednesday to review that plan. We've been working on the special education plan and our continuum of services, which is a really big deal. Our special education teachers have been amazing. They've met with me individually, we've met as groups, not only helping me to understand our students and our services, but also identifying gaps. And it's been a really good learning curve for me, and they are just impressive, to say the least. Our district comprehensive guidance plan, been working with our administrators in both buildings to update that, as well as our school counselors. They've been doing a really great job with identifying our scope and sequence and moving forward with what that roadmap looks like. I mean, Kelly talked about that in her presentation. What can parents expect and students expect to be exposed to in kindergarten through 12th grade career and college readiness, as well as academics and what we do social emotionally. So I'm really excited to show you that work later on. I met with the bus drivers, so thank you, Greg. I was able to come in and meet with all of them and just get a sense of their routes. They are the first people who meet our students in the morning and the last ones to see them at the end of the day. So it was important for me to have them get to know me and for me to get to know them. And then probably the last thing I think that I'll talk with you about today is just working with Mr. White on updating our webpage, special ed. So that's it, it's been a busy 2 months and 8 days. Any questions for me?
We've been made aware that there's a shortage of special education teachers. Do you foresee that getting any better?
Do we foresee that getting any better?
That's been a challenge, not just here, but regional.
Oh, I know.
And across the state.
Absolutely.
You know, the state has provided some increased flexibility on certification, especially during COVID, which has helped with that candidate pool, but overall, they're challenging to come by. And anytime I have an opportunity to sit down with one of our student teachers, I encourage them to become duly certified and pick up that special ed certification.
Absolutely. I know, it's a worry. It's a really good.
The teaching environment right now is not encouraging to become teachers.
Well, I believe Syracuse, you have to have a special ed certification as well as a regular ed.
I can see Syracuse doing that, definitely.
It requires dual.
Yeah. All right, thank you very, very much. Thank you. Mr. Carziba, technology.
Well, hopefully I'm the shortest presentation. So to bring you up to speed, what we've been doing a lot lately is looking at kind of longer term, where we need to be in the summer to lead and get people supported with building project related things, look at where our Chromebook replacement cycle is, working closely with the business office on that and figuring out funding and getting pricing and really working with vendors. Classroom related, we've been doing a lot of kind of more higher level monitoring because of those social wellness concerns and reaching out to principals and guidance counselors and saying, this kid's doing some activity that's concerning, suicide, those types of things. So we see those alerts come up, we get notifications, reach out to people and kind of do things like that. So it's really kind of been our bread and butter, just keeping things running and just what we're continue to do. So any questions I can answer? All right, me.
And thank you, Mr. Carziba, for making efforts to increase our sound system this evening, because it was brought to our attention that our community at home who tune in have trouble hearing sometimes. So he's tried to increase the sound system temporarily. He's also approached with some longer term solutions. So thank you for taking care of that tonight. Hopefully it's working at home.
Mr. First Floor, transportation.
Good evening. We also, team's doing great. The fall sports or the winter sports went really well and we have buses on the road quite often now. Everything's going well. The fleet's doing very good. We had DOT a week ago and we have it again this week. Just happened to be bunched up. Everything's presenting well. I talked about the 19A audit last time. It's taken a long time. I just got a confirmation back from them the other day stating in general that we're in compliance. and that's all they said, so, that's all good news, so, there's no details, but we're in a good place there. Everything's going well. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Swartz.
Mrs. Zimmerman, Superintendent Rutherford.
I just have a couple quick things to bring to your attention. I was approached by Mayor Maxey a couple weeks ago. I understand that this board has been approached a few years back regarding the request to partially fund crossing guards. I was not here for that history, but I do have some historical artifacts, a communication letter from Mr. Thompson at the time, and a proposed intermunicipal agreement. So back in 2018, the law changed that allows school districts to partially fund crossing guards, but does not require districts to do that. And he is asking, perhaps new superintendent, I'm not sure, but he did acknowledge that the board has not been supportive in the past of this and is asking to reconsider, noting that the village has 5 crossing guards, paid $20 an hour, $3,600 per individual, and is asking the board to, since you're currently working on your budget, asking your board to consider paying for 1 or 2 crossing guards. We do not need an answer on this tonight, but I just wanted to bring this to your attention, that this is something that is being requested. I have not yet even gone any deeper as to ask Mr. Schultz to do any calculations. We have not included this in our current budget, we had no plans to, but I did tell Mr. Maxey that I would bring this up again to our Board of Education. So I don't have the history beyond that, nor do I understand the rationale or discussion that had ensued. I don't want to assume that. But I wanted to bring that tonight for your feedback, consideration.
Well, history, I think 3 years ago maybe, it was brought up, I don't know if that is around the date of that letter. And maybe even more recently than that, and one of the concerns was not only the predictability of our budget and the sustainability plan for that, because once you assume it, it is assumed, but also where there's clear delineation of responsibility, it seemed to blur some of that responsibility and who did what to who and why. And we were concerned, I think, that we didn't know, would there be other things that all of a sudden would be something that would be come over as requests, because it looked like one year maybe our budget was in better shape than what the village thought theirs was, and so it was a conversation and a resolution, I think, at that time that the board came to keep things the way that they had been, based on the responsibilities.
Whose responsibility would it be to safely get the students to the campus? Is it crossing guard?
It's municipal government,
So the
yes, the village.
So the village is responsible for
Yes.
so they're just asking us to take a piece of their responsibility.
Yes.
Right, and there also was a discussion, and there's supposed to be an addition, if the district agrees to the funding, it's supposed to do so in return for increasing the number of guards who are participating. That's the last little kicker in the statute, so.
Which we are not requesting. We would not be requesting a crossing guard.
Well, you're supposed to request it if you're going to participate in the funding. And I think that came up the last time.
Well, it happened because of the crossing at Sheldon Drive, from Park Place. That was an increase, but not based on a request from us.
Right.
It
That was a
was,
request by the
it was
municipality.
noted that there were 6 or 7 kids crossing there, and there was a walkway put in there, or permanent, and a crossing guard added there, but that was not at our request.
I have a question or any clarification. Does our school still bus all the kids, no matter where they live?
No, not
You don't do that
if you
anymore?
live in the village. K, first, second, third, get bused. Can,
Even if they live next door?
if they, I don't know.
We're busing them all.
That's what I thought, no matter where they live,
Now
right?
you're still busing them all, because I remember when I lived in the village, our children were told, you cannot,
That's correct, years ago it was that way, but with all the different things and liabilities and,
So I don't know,
It's
different hazards, safety zones and so forth like that, that they're all, now, do they all participate? Not always. A lot of older kids will walk or so forth, or some transport. Some of the places that we don't bus is like Park Place. We don't provide a service on Sheldon Drive, Park Place within that close. But again, I believe in that situation, those residents and all went directly to the village and that. And the school's part of that was that we did build a sidewalk to the street to match. So we did participate in that. Also, we clean it and have it ready on our side of it.
We maintain our property.
Correct. We maintain ours and we provided to that meeting point on our property.
so I guess I understand if kids and parents choose to have their kids walk, but they don't have to.
No.
We don't technically have to have crossing guards,
That's correct.
because every kid's allowed to bus, even if they live on Delaware Avenue. Correct? Okay.
it makes a difference.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyone else on
I'll follow up with the mayor, but oftentimes I think there's opportunities for grants to be acquired for healthy communities or walking routes or those sorts of things. And through COVID, there hasn't been a lot of opportunity for grants, but I foresee that as a possibility.
They had a few years ago, a grant and a big program called the Walking School Bus. And opposed to crossing guards, what it was is you had, parent programs, and it was like a shared, it's like neighborhood watch thing where every week somebody would be assigned, or a certain day of the week someone was assigned, start out at the beginning of the street and come down through, collect the families, and they'd all walk together, but there'd be one adult chaperone that would be doing it. I believe at that time, I don't know how much compensation, but they were, they had the walking school bus, is what they call it, and they would deliver them to the property, and then we walk back or whatever, so there's always some supervision with the group that collectively come from certain areas. I think the grant was more for the coordination of it and running it, because I almost think it was like kind of volunteer or parent participation or so. And it was all part of the healthy school back too, with the younger children getting out and walking and exercising.
So are these crossing guards, the village employees, the village
Yes.
people?
Yes.
I'm assuming they're
Yes.
background checked?
I don't know that for
I
sure.
don't know, I just,
That's
okay, I was curious.
So at this point, is the board interested in further discussion, additional information, or is the board wanting me to respond to Mr. Maxey with respectfully declining his request?
I personally respectfully decline this request.
I just think we're providing opportunity for every kid to ride the bus, except the ones that live on Sheldon Drive or Park Place. I think it's solved. I mean, if they choose not to do that and walk, then
Historically, that's been our response. Okay.
So respectfully decline. Anyone else, does anyone disagree with us?
agree.
Agree?
Village resident.
What's that, Sean?
Go ahead.
You want to do any more comments for it?
No, I think I'm the only village resident here on the board.
Believe so, so. Are you okay with us doing?
No comment.
Okay, no comment. That's perfectly understandable.
All right, thank you for entertaining that. I just have two pieces of positive feedback. Girl Scout Troop 60301 came to my attention, donated 40 boxes of Girl Scout cookies for our backpack program. So during their sales, they advertised that, they brought an additional 40 boxes, we were able to turnkey those,
in our backpack program. So a huge thank you. We will write out a letter of thanks to that troop. Awesome. I also had a parent write a letter. This is from Alicia Boyer, who said I could say her name and read her note of recognition here. I would feel remiss if we didn't extend praise and empathy for all you and the DA staff are doing. You all make the impossible possible every day. That does not go unnoticed. Though the hybrid learning model may not have been ideal for our daughter, it is in no way a critique of her teachers' tireless efforts to educate these kids. The school staff on every level has been outstanding. Having some understanding of its intricacies and complexities, I do believe that DA's model has served our children well in this weird and uncertain time. We're pleased to know the plan is in the process of evolving and shifting. Like the spring arriving, new bright things are on the horizon. So that was really nice feedback. That's all I have.
Any questions for Mrs. Zimmerman? Come on.
Stop it. You've heard enough from me tonight.
Now on to us, board committee reports. The athletic committee, anything to report?
I just wanted to add that at the last athletic committee, Mr. Sean Clark of the Clark Corporation was there, and he generously offered personnel from the Clark Foundation to look at the field at different times and give ideas so that we don't ruin it, because of overuse.
No,
Which was nice to have community involvement.
We also had a couple of students join us for our
Yes,
meeting.
yes.
That was a request for information, so we asked that they attend our committee meeting. It really was a great productive discussion. They did a terrific job of asking questions about how decisions were made within our league. Well, actually starting at the New York State level, county league section, those sorts of things. And their focus was really about representation and communication, which in a year like this has been a big thing because things are evolving, decisions are being made that have a direct impact on them. So they wondered about how that all took place. And a couple of good themes came out of that is, how do they get information about what's happening at the state section league levels, and there was some suggestions about how potentially we could work toward a model of student representation at the league level, which would seem a good idea and appropriate. Mr. Farrar had some good ideas, Kelly had some good ideas, and so they're going to be taking those to the league level, and I think the two young ladies that came would be willing and are willing to author a letter that sort of encapsulates those requests. And I think that'd be a good jumping off point. But things like websites and things that came up were good ideas and would be, I think, a good resource for families and students to look at notes from meetings, decisions that were coming up, and officers and the whole thing. But it was a very positive discussion. I think, don't you think it was?
Yeah, no, I thought the students both added quite a bit to the committee meeting. One other thing I just was thinking, in our discussion, we were talking about possibly putting up records in different athletic events on a webpage. So it has come up occasionally where they'll say, how many assists will break a record? In whether it be in field hockey or old field hockey, or how many takedowns or whatever, how many tackles. And I wasn't aware that people were taking that data, and I guess that's what colleges are looking for too. Sure.
Yeah, so that was great, and I think also, an acknowledgement of the success of the winter sports plan and how effective that was. I know it took a lot of work and a lot of thought, but hats off to, I know we did a lot of leadership with that at Delaware Academy internally here. And to my knowledge, in the winter sports, there was not an instance of COVID that impacted any of the schedules that we were involved in. that is impressive because the number of schools, student athletes, coaches that were part of it, I gotta believe it's because of all of the protocols and procedures that went into it that were all spelled out in that plan that was developed, so hats off. I think, that was a terrific result for the kids, they really enjoyed getting back.
And I think resounding, all our athletes, male and female, were very, very thankful to even have an abbreviated season, just to be getting a little closer to what was in the past.
Yep.
Any questions for them? All right, board liaison, you're back, Lucy.
There were a number of concerns brought up, and I did give them to Superintendent Zimmerman, and she is, which I am very pleased, she is going to take these concerns and maybe cut and paste and make an email to all faculty so that they could see. Concerns had to do with building project in the elementary, the timing, what happens if we come back full-time, the briefing of reopening for remote and AIS teachers, parent attendance at sport events was a concern, professional development offerings this year was a concern, and which I brought up to Mrs. Miller, the concern of styrofoam. One thing that I didn't bring up that was verbally said to me, there was a concern about maybe some of the music that was being played at the sporting events might not have been appropriate.
Oh.
And I know in the past, there used to be a person who would listen to it before, so if a student said, play this please, you said, and I didn't realize, but I remember Ms. Wheeler, Gail Wheeler, would say, well, I won't play your version because I know what your version has. I'll play my version that.
The radio play version.
Yes, apparently there's two versions sometimes
Yes, they're all
that bleep out things, so.
Even those walk the fine
They are,
line, so.
the underlying theme is always so.
Yeah, well, anyhow, there was a concern about how the possibility of us not really, I can't understand what they're saying most of the time. I have to.
No, but I will add that on the list for follow-up, because I know that we do regularly have a staff member who's in charge of that. So I will follow up on that thing.
Well, okay, but I think this year there was a rotation of who might have done music too, and maybe that wasn't always seen as much.
Do you want to add anything, Sean?
Well, yeah, in addition to what Lucy mentioned, there was some concerns that related to the specific performance of specific individuals that I think should be taken up in executive session.
Any questions for? Back to you, Sean and James, for capital project.
Go first. So we toured the project at the elementary school. The library is carpets up, books are gone, bookshelves are gone, and that's gonna sit there until they can work on windows. I think a lot of this was in Friday's report from Kelly and Gary. The kitchen, the floors are all removed dirt, they're working on the subsurface work, and there's nothing left, it's a big square indoor dirt arena. Cafeteria ceilings are all gone, lights are gone, they're working, they've got the floor removed where they're putting the future bathroom. We didn't really talk about the problems with the plumbing in the hallway today with everybody, but there's a pipe that's pitched the wrong way, and they found it, and it kinda, they're working on an estimate to address that, because it's tied in, the new kitchen drains are gonna tie into this drain, And the bathroom that's going in out there is also tying into that drain. And, so they're looking at, the contractor's supposed to get an estimate to the school and try to do the repair work over the Easter break if possible. It looks like it's probably 25 feet, give or take, of flooring that would have to be cut out in the hallway. And then they just cement it over until the summertime. And then they said the asbestos abatement, Gary said, and Dave said it's gonna start on the 29th of March, and they are going to be asking the school district about putting a access door into the center of the school, because the only two access points are on the opposite ends of the building at this point. That's about what we saw with that and talked about.
That's pretty much sums it up. Like Gary said, and Jane said, that sewer drain is really, we're looking at our first, change order of any significance, and I think we should know soon what the actual cost of that will be. But, that's really it.
Okay, any questions? All right, Finance Committee, Tammy, staff, do you have anything to add to Mr. Schultz's presentation?
Carrie, your report was so long, I think you got all of it, didn't you?
Yeah, we did.
The meeting was at 7 o'clock in the morning, whatever day that was, and that was a long time ago. I think so. Policy.
We did not meet this month. We took the month off, and we are going to meet next month, and we have a couple of items that will be on our agenda that we discussed.
I have received sample policies regarding service animals and signing of contracts.
Okay.
So we'll have those to consider in the next policy committee meeting, and then we'll bring those to the entire board once we have some delineation.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Next section is policy review. We are not going to be taking action. We just in the midst of the second reading of policies 31, 32, 36, 37, 38, 41, and 54. Old business, we do not have any old business. New business, we have a bid award for the independent external auditing service. That will be Swinar, I never see that. Swinar and Company. They will be performing our independent external auditing services for the year ending June 30th for 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25. A motion, please. So, thank you, Tammy. And a second? Second. Thank you, Lucy. Any questions or comments about this? Yes, go ahead.
They were the sole responder to the RFP, so I know there's a law about, we can renew a contract, I think once, right? And then it has to be put out for bid, is that, I believe?
Yeah,
So this was put out for bid.
It was put out for bid, yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
seeing
it was
that
publicly, yeah.
so that resets, obviously, is, I guess my question.
Any other questions?
Is that a normal rate or?
Yeah, that's actually a little lower than what their original rate was last 5 years. I would say that, and the auditing firm prior to that was about $7,000 higher per year. So, they're local, they don't have to travel far from New York to Norwich, which is not too far, but, I'll say this right now. They told me this too, and I agree 100%. We have really good policies and procedures here and structure, and the fact that they're not coming in and, finding anything that's really wrong. We're pretty consistent with our business office, we've got good staffing, so it's not a really hard audit, I would say that. So I think their pricing is aligned with that.
Any other questions?
I had a conversation with them to make sure that they're a little bit more timely with their reports, that the board gets to see that in at least a 30-day window prior to the board.
Thank you for reminding us of that. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion is carried. We were going to have a discussion consideration for returning all students to in-person learning. This is open to any board member.
Any additional questions? This was actually placed on there before I added it into tonight's presentation. So I think that we probably hit it all there, and I just got neglected.
That's fine, it's fine, I also just don't want anyone to feel like we didn't have a question answered.
Absolutely.
Or they didn't have an opportunity to speak. Go ahead.
I just want to suggest, as the reopening committees reestablished or revisited, that we make sure that we're providing the opportunity for people in the community who want to be involved and have a voice on our committee to do that. I know that was a guidance from the state to involve the community as much as possible in that process originally, and assuming it would be the same now. I know
Go ahead.
And we added, as it developed, people were added, and I just think that would be.
The intent is not to let the doors wide open to anybody who wants to participate, but just to clarify. Many districts are fulfilling that spirit by all the surveys that you've seen out there. And we've always enjoyed huge participation from community feedback, as you saw in the data tonight. But coming out of the gate, you're right, we did add student representation and parent representation after that committee was originally developed. And we do plan to maintain those positions of being represented.
Do you anticipate having to do public forums like we had to in summer?
There's no requirement for public forums, but as I mentioned earlier, I do foresee doing another public presentation.
Right. But not like the structure you must do.
Correct.
We don't have that.
Correct, because this is not a requirement.
Just trying to see. It's gonna be like pretty open.
Yeah, I think it's all speculation really at this point, what
Yes,
would be
right, it is.
potentially required or expected.
That's right, that's right, and we're not trying to be
But it is
invasive,
proactive
less than
now.
transparent, we just.
Right, let's all be prepared that we may have to do a couple of public hearings or meetings as a board again to address whatever might come down the road.
And I think, I just wanted to mention also that there was a tremendous response in written narratives, as you mentioned, in the survey. And it really, it was impressive to me reading through them to see the full spectrum of where people in the community are at and what their thoughts are and considerations of things they've thought about that maybe I hadn't even heard to me having my own perspective. So thank you, I wanna mention that to the community for sharing those insights. It was an eye-opener for sure. And I'm sure it will lead decision-making or assist in that going forward.
Right, any other questions or comments about? All right, we're back to public comments. Does anyone have any? All right. Board comments. I know we've all spoken, but you have your another opportunity here. So, Vice President Newman.
Just sort of a forward-thinking comment. We're looking at having the student board representative.
Yes.
What kind of, what do we have in place, or what should we plan on having in place to facilitate communication back and forth? Because I know not everything is gonna happen at the board meeting. Is it a committee?
You mean to establish the position?
Right, and then to get feedback, hear feedback, because I'm not sure that student's gonna wanna say a whole lot or have a whole lot to say at the meeting, but what goes on behind the scenes before and after meetings, what gets put in place to facilitate that?
So the first piece is that the community needs to support the establishment of that position. And then the district puts the parameters in place for interviewing, selection, and a pseudo job description, truly. And not only does that cover what the role can and cannot do, but the expectations. I've already spoken with the student senate out, to lay out all of those expectations for the successful candidate, which includes you need to have your thumb on the pulse of your student body so that you can come and actively participate in our Board of Education meetings. Beyond that, I haven't put a lot of thought into the details surrounding that, but we are planning on including 1 or 2 board members in the interview process and selection process for that student. In terms of that's the process that student would garner feedback, I haven't thought in that much detail yet. I guess that would be in conversation. I want to engage the student, in deciding how you're going to solicit input from not just your friends, but from all students, because your role is to represent a diverse set of opinions.
I'm just really excited to do this. I hope the community is as well, because I think it's a great opportunity for us, for the student, and for the student body. So, that, great presentation.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you. And it's just nice to be reinforced all along as we go as to the efforts and the positivity that remains in the buildings is really nice to see.
I was just gonna add that, I'd like to see, at least a sketchy thing about what the board member duties would be for the general public, because I'm thinking if I was a person, I understand the budget because Mr. Schultz would explain what was on it and the effect, but to say, oh, yes, I want a person, a student on it when they don't know what their responsibilities would be or the parameters of their authority even. It might make it hard for them to decide.
So when we publish our flyer regarding
Yes.
budget, that would kind of be a great spot to explain every referendum that will be on the ballot.
Yep.
With an explanation of that rationale.
That would be great.
Yep.
It's pretty well spelled out, is it not, in state ed law, that ex officio position and what it can and cannot involve.
Mrs. Shepherd.
Mr. Hayes.
I just want to restate congratulations to Peggy Hannigan and her retirement.
Yeah.
That's a lot of years, and I think when I was in, it was her 7th or 8th grade was her first year, and that seems like not that long ago, hard to believe. That many years ago, but huge congratulations to Mrs. Hannigan.
Trustee Lenny.
Oh, well, I think a couple of things I had to touch on have been addressed. Just want to suggest that we, keep that agenda item on the agenda going forward for the reopening and keep that dialogue going forward. I think a lot of the concerns and questions that I had received in the community were addressed by the very well prepared presentation, but I'm sure there'll be more going forward, I would say. Bookmark a spot for that discussion going forward.
Got that, Mrs. Temple? The other thing is, just leave the reopening discussion agenda item on there, just.
Okay, so that will repeat.
Okay, yeah.
Probably for the remainder of the school year.
Yeah.
Pass into the fall.
So,
Yes.
No, I'm good.
I just want to reiterate, Mrs. Hannigan has put in so many years. I know the math department feels like she cannot be replaced. You know, be a person who will get, but how can you replace 35 years of experience? And and knowing our district, but, and I also wish her the best of luck. I also want to echo what Mrs. Robbins and Mrs. Mabel and Superintendent Kelly, Zimmerman, has stated. We have just a phenomenal faculty and staff that work very hard. If we didn't know it was COVID, we wouldn't know, you know, it was like, we just carried on. And when it didn't work, we just didn't give up, we just tried to rethink it and what was best for our students, and I appreciate that.
I've spoken enough, so I'm going to go into executive session. We need a motion to enter an executive session for receiving legal advice from the board attorney with no action. Motion, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Lucy, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight. We will have our next meeting is the budget workshop on March 29th at 5 p.m. and Tuesday, April 27th, which is the regular meeting. That's a